Chapter 65. Shi Fengju was stunned and couldn't help but stare at her deeply, only to see that her expression remained indifferent as usual. He couldn't help but laugh at himself for thinking too much. What was he thinking? She had no choice but to stay in the Shi household and had long planned to leave. Why did he feel that her words carried a tinge of jealousy? It wasn't that she was jealous, but that he had taken the wrong medicine. After washing his hands, face, and changing his clothes, Shi Fengju gestured for everyone to leave with a glance when the maidservant served tea. Sang Wan's handkerchief tightened. She knew what he was going to say. Wasn't this the same thing that had been causing a ruckus in the household these past few days? Wan Yang. Shi Fengju only realized the difficulty of the words when he was about to say them. After mulling over it for a while, he finally managed to call out Sang Wan's name, but the rest of his words were suddenly cut off. N. Sang Wan raised her eyes and quietly stared at him. Her fair and delicate face glowed with a healthy glow, as beautiful as an orchid. He wasn't in a hurry, and neither was she. Regarding Fengzi's matter, Shi Fengju sighed. He didn't need to say anything more. Sang Wan nodded and then shook her head. She smiled faintly and said, "I know, this matter was decided by Mother. It has nothing to do with you, so I don't blame you. I just want to know, what kind of idea was this?" Shi Fengju's heart sank slightly. He knew that she was reminding him of what he had promised her, the promise between them. He felt even more apologetic. Sang Wan saw his conflicted look and couldn't help but giggle. She smiled and said, "You don't need to feel guilty about this matter, really. This had nothing to do with you in the first place. Young master is a man of his words, and I believe that you wouldn't lie to a little girl like me. Besides, isn't this matter in the past now? You should have known when you met Mother. I'm afraid that this matter can only be discussed after Miss Gu's mourning period. This way, it doesn't conflict with our agreement. I'm also grateful that you've saved me and the Sang family's face." It was clear that everything was the will of the heavens. Sang Wan did not dare to say it out loud, but she secretly added a sentence in her heart. Wan Yang. Upon hearing these words, Shi Fengju felt even more guilty. His tongue felt heavier and heavier. He hated himself for being like this. He was clearly not an indecisive person. Otherwise, he would not have been able to control such a huge business like the Shi family. But in the face of her gentle smile and tranquil expression, he felt that he couldn't bear it. There was even a faint trace of unwillingness. What should be said still had to be said. It would happen sooner or later. Shi Fengju hardened his heart. With a single sentence, he had ruthlessly shattered Sang Wan's elegance and restraint, as well as her indifference, her self-esteem, and her face. Wan Yang, Fengzi will still be marrying into the family on the 6th day of the 8th month. This matter will not change. The smile froze on her face, and the bright starlight in her eyes suddenly dimmed. Sang Wan felt as if her heart had been hammered. Her ears were ringing, and her mind was blank. The people in front of him also became blurry. She felt a wave of dizziness. What did you say?" Sang Wan asked with difficulty. This is marrying into the family on the 100th day of mourning? Is this your idea, or Mother's idea?" Sang Wan tried her best to maintain the last trace of modesty as she asked. To her, there was a difference. However, she was completely disappointed. Although Shi Fengju's voice was soft, she heard every word clearly. He said, "This is my idea." You can't wait. Sang Wan's palms were tightly clenched. She tried her best to control her anger and unwillingness. So what if she was unwilling? She had long known that although there was an agreement between them, both sides of the agreement were never equal. The so-called fairness was completely based on his character and conduct. If he was willing to abide by it, then the agreement was valid. If he wanted to break it, then he would break it. What could she do? "Shi Fengju, you really disappoint me. I've always been too naive." "Wan Yang, I'm sorry." When Shi Fengju saw her suddenly pale face and the expression she was trying her best to hold back, he felt extremely uncomfortable. especially when she was smiling so gently just a moment ago and had so much faith in him. However, he had destroyed that trust in him. Shi Fengju suddenly felt a bitter and inexplicable sense of absurdity and irony. He had hoped so much that Gu Fengzi would trust him, but he knew that she had never done so. On the other hand, the person in front of him had never doubted him, but he had cruelly let her down. Fengzi is not young anymore, she can't wait any longer, Shi Fengju said leisurely. But don't worry, if someone bullies you or gives you a hard time, I'll stand up for you. Wan Nyong, in this household, I won't let you suffer. Sang Wan's heart was bitter, but more than that, she felt embarrassed and humiliated. She always thought that he was different, but now she knew that she had always been wrong. Can I still believe in you? Sang Wan did not ask. She had already given herself the answer in her heart. What if she's the one who wronged me? Sang Wan did not know why, but she asked herself this question. Shi Fengju was startled, but after a moment, he said seriously, she won't. Even if it's her, she won't. Sang Wan pretended that she did not hear anything and smiled. Congratulations, young master. Young master's wish for so many years has finally been fulfilled. It's really worth celebrating. Shi Fengju smiled bitterly. He had never heard her speak in such a sarcastic tone, but at this moment, his heart only felt more guilty and apologetic. She's just entering the door, everything will be the same as before. Shi Fengju could not help but explain. Sang Wan, however, had no interest in listening any further. She stood up and smiled. I've already arranged for the luggage that young master brought back to be placed in the study room. Nanny Li was the one who personally brought those boxes in. We don't know what those things are, so we didn't dare to touch them. Young master can bring some people to clean them up later. Alright, what would young master like to eat tonight? If there is, tell me and I'll instruct the kitchen to prepare it early. If there isn't, how about we follow young master's usual preferences? The eldest young master must be tired now, so go and rest. I'm afraid there's still something going on outside. Xing Ji, that lass, has been looking over here a few times. Shi Fengju was stunned. He could not help but think, could it be that changing faces is a woman's innate ability? Fengzi had changed into someone he could not recognize, and Wan Yang had also changed into someone he could not recognize. Oh, then I'll leave you to it. I'll go to the study room. You can prepare dinner as you see fit. As long as you like it, I don't mind. At this moment, Sang Wan was exuding an aura that Shi Fengju had never seen before. Although he had never seen it before, his sharp intuition as a businessman told him that it was best not to provoke her and to avoid her. Okay, I understand. Sang Wan said lightly. Shi Fengju forced a smile and retreated in a sorry state. During dinner, Shi Fengju knew that he should return to Ning Garden early to accompany Sang Wan. However, he did not have the courage to go back. He subconsciously felt that he did not dare to face her. In the end, he could only say that he had something to do and eat in the study room. Sang Wan did not have to wait for him. Sang Wan was more than happy to hear that. She immediately ordered the kitchen to send the dishes she had prepared for him to the study room. She then took her time to enjoy her meal. After dinner, Shi Fengju sent a servant to deliver a set of the latest travel books published in the capital. He said that he had specially bought it for Sang Wan. Sang Wan thanked him and ordered the servant to take it. However, she was not in the mood to read it. She only ordered him to put it away and read it when he had time. The atmosphere in Ning Garden suddenly became very strange. No one could tell what was strange about it, but they could not put their finger on it. That was because everyone was too normal. Especially the eldest young master and the eldest young mistress. They were so abnormal that people could not help but feel nervous. Eldest young mistress, it seems that the eldest young master still has you in his heart. Mama Li advised with a smile, look, the eldest young master cares about everything that you like. The eldest young master has just returned. Eldest young mistress, you should be more concerned about the eldest young master. Why don't you send these grapes to the study room? You can accompany the eldest young master and talk to him. These are fresh grapes that were brought in from the farmstead today. They're still fresh. Mama, ask Lu Ye or Xing Ji to go. Why don't you make a trip there too? I'm a bit tired today and want to sleep early. In the past, Sang Wan would never go against Mama Li's wishes. Even if she coaxed and tempted Wang, she would still listen to Mama Li. However, today, she suddenly felt dispirited. It was as if the things that she thought were important and valued in the past were not that important anymore. Mama Li was startled and secretly sighed. She gave a look to dismiss everyone. Not only was she not angry, she even felt a bit of pity. In her opinion, the eldest young mistress was good at everything. She could not find fault with anything and could be said to be perfect. However, because she was too perfect, she lacked the spark that a human should have. Without the spark, was she still a human? She was like the cold clay bodhisattva in the temple. At this time, her slightly angry expression was even more amiable and adorable than usual. If Sang Wan knew of Mama Li's evaluation of her, what kind of expression would Sang Wan have? Eldest young mistress. Mama Li smiled as she personally poured a cup of hot tea and handed it to her. She smiled and advised, "Old slave knows that you're unhappy, but it's not necessarily a bad thing if you don't look at it this way." Sang Wan found her words funny and asked half-jokingly, "Oh? Then how does Mama think it's a good thing?" Mama Li smiled and said, "Just think about it. She's anxious to marry into the family now, so she'll be even worse than before. You'll know that it's definitely not a bad thing." As Mama Li spoke, she recounted what she had said to Wang and the various orders she had given at Peony Park. She sneered and said, "Old slave knows exactly what that little vixen is thinking. In the end, isn't she just afraid that the eldest young master who has been mourning at home for 3 years won't want her? That's why she's anxious to marry into the family. Eldest young mistress, just wait and see. There's a lot of taboos for women who are in mourning. When she comes, just wait and see how old slave will deal with her. After 3 years of discipline, she'll be well behaved and be reborn. She won't be able to jump around anymore." Sang Wan didn't know whether to laugh or cry. She and Mama Li simply couldn't get along. That wasn't what she was thinking, but she couldn't say it to Mama Li. However, after hearing Mama Li's words, why did her gloomy mood suddenly improve? Chapter 66. "Nanny," Sang Wan sighed with a smile, "I know you are good to me and Wan Nyang is extremely grateful. You may say that, but when the time comes, we still have to consider eldest young master's thoughts. If Miss Biao complains, or if she acts coquettishly in front of mother, those who don't know will think that we're taking advantage of our position to bully and humiliate other people's orphans." These words were exactly what Mammy Li liked to hear. Mammy Li felt relieved and couldn't help beaming with joy. She said with relief, "Otherwise, the legal wife is the legal wife, and the concubine is the concubine. It is truly destined from the heavens. Young mistress, how can a concubine compare to your breadth of mind? Look, the old slave hasn't done anything yet and you are already saying this." Sang Wan was stunned and she was also stunned. "I just want to live the rest of my life peacefully and don't want him to look down on me. I, Sang Wan, am an upright person and am not the type to take my anger out on others." Young mistress, seeing that Sang Wan was silent, Mama Li sighed again. "Listen to Nanny's advice and don't tire yourself. Young master's heart is definitely with you. At this time, you can't turn his heart cold. To put it bluntly, he was brought up by the old slave and the old slave knows his temperament better than him. That little vixen is definitely not a good match for him. Only you are worthy of the position of young mistress. In the end, isn't she just trying to make me take the initiative to curry favor with him and make him feel even more guilty while he is feeling guilty?" Sang Wan secretly shook her head. Not to mention whether it would be useful or not, she disdained to do such a thing. Nanny, Sang Wan knew that she would not be able to persuade Nanny Li on this matter, so she said with a bitter face, "I'm really tired today, so I won't be going." Her heart skipped a beat and she said coquettishly, "Nanny, why don't you go? Young master might also want to see you and talk to you. I don't have much energy right now, and my complexion isn't good either. I can't let young master see me and affect his mood. Nanny, what do you think?" Young mistress, you're really... Mama Lee didn't know whether to be angry or to laugh. Thinking about it, she felt comfortable and nodded with a smile. Fine. The old slave would make a trip there. Young mistress, since you're tired, you should rest earlier. Sangwon had the same idea. She smiled and said gratefully, Good. Granny, you can go now. As soon as Mama Lee left, Sangwon washed up and went to bed. She was in a really bad mood and didn't want to meet Shi Fengju. By the time Shi Fengju returned to Ning Garden from the study, Sangwon had already gone to bed. After hearing what the servant girl said, Shi Fengju secretly let out a sigh of relief. He also washed up and entered the room. As usual, he gently took out the bedding that he hadn't used for a long time from the cabinet and carefully spread it on the ground. He looked at the tightly closed bed curtain and gently lay down. From the moment he entered, Sangwon could feel it. Subconsciously, she controlled her breathing and laid quietly. When everything returned to silence, she gently opened her eyes. She couldn't see anything clearly in the darkness, just like her current mood. The next morning, when Sangwon woke up, Shi Fengju had already left. Sangwon didn't say anything and just washed up and ate breakfast as usual. Young mistress, the old slave has already given instructions to the peony park. Does young mistress want to go over and see if it's appropriate? Is there anything that needs to be changed? Mama Lee asked after breakfast. Naturally, no one could find fault with Mama Lee's work. Sangwon understood what she meant. She was thinking for her. After she went over and took a few glances and nodded, this matter would be considered as her arrangement. In front of Wang, she would appear magnanimous and hands-on. All right. When the other mothers and sisters-in-law come and report the matter, we'll go over and take a look. Sangwon didn't want to brush away Mama Lee's good intentions, so she smiled and nodded. Yes, young mistress. Mama Lee agreed with satisfaction when she saw that she understood her painstaking efforts. After dealing with the general affairs, Sangwon, accompanied by Mama Lee, Lu Ye, and Xing Ji, went to Peony Park. She saw that the brightly colored potted flowers that had been placed at the entrance of the courtyard had all been moved away. Even the 2 large blue and white porcelain jars that had been planted with pomegranates had been moved away. They were replaced by a potted cypress that was as tall as a person. The dense dark green branches and leaves looked dignified. The red lanterns hanging on the eaves had also been replaced with plain colors. There were no decorations at all. When they entered the room, it was as cold and cheerless as a snow cave. The sun was shining brightly outside, but Sangwon couldn't help but shiver and feel a chill. Isn't it a bit too plain? Sangwon couldn't help but say, It's not plain. This is still considered good. Mama Lee said decisively, They are truly in mourning. There aren't any decorations at all. Look, the old slave didn't even ask to put away the plain porcelain vase. The curtains weren't changed to white either. The plain old slave felt that this plain blue vase was very good. It's light and refreshing. It suits Miss Biao's current status and mood. Mama Lee's reasonable words made Sangwon gasp in amazement. She felt more and more that she had lived her previous life in vain. There were thousands of rules in this world. If the main wife wanted to punish a concubine, there would be thousands of reasons. How could she be so useless and be punished so miserably by Gu Fengzi? Are the bedding and cushions thick enough? Morning is morning, but don't let Miss Biao catch a cold. Sangwon said lightly. Discipline was discipline, but she couldn't let others have a reason to criticize her. Young mistress, don't worry, Mama Lee said with a confident smile. Everything is of the highest quality. Miss Biao's body is delicate. How can we let her suffer? Sangwon smiled and nodded. She knew that she had worried for nothing. How could Mama Lee let others have a reason to hold her back? Don't prepare the clothes first. When Miss Biao comes, let her choose the material and then make it. Maybe she became thinner because she was sad and the measurements were wrong. Sangwon said again. Mama Lee was stunned. In her opinion, they should make plain coarse clothes for Gu Fengzi. But since Sangwon had already ordered it, she couldn't refute and could only agree. The side room for old Master Gu's memorial tablet has also been prepared. Young mistress, do you want to take a look? Mama Lee said again. Sang-won obeyed and almost couldn't wait to leave the cold and cheerless room. She went to the west side room and casually looked outside. She saw that the four walls were empty. There was only a long table in the middle with an incense burner on the table and a thick round cushion on the ground. She nodded and left. It will be the 6th day of the new year in a few days. Mama, keep an eye on it. Make sure that everything is prepared before then. Seeing that the festival is coming, I have to be busy preparing. Sang-won said with a smile. Young mistress, don't worry. The old slave knows. Mama Lee was energized. All right, Sang-won thought for a while and asked again. Miss Biao is part of our family now that she has married into our family. Is there any taboo to pay attention to during the Mid-Autumn Festival? Mama Lee snorted in disdain and said with a smile, Old mistress loves a lively atmosphere. Young mistress can prepare as lively as possible. The Gu family's matters have nothing to do with our Shi family. Young mistress, don't worry. Then I know. Sang-won smiled. Asking this in front of everyone was just to prevent Gu Fengzi from making a fuss about it in the future. Back in Ning Garden, Luya helped Sang-won change her clothes. She couldn't help but stick out her tongue and sigh. Miss Biao is such a smart person. I really don't know why she would rather be a concubine. Old mistress likes her so much. Wouldn't it be great if she could be the official wife outside? Being a concubine and entering the family like this, it's really, young mistress, this servant doesn't mean anything else. Luya suddenly remembered that Gu Fengzi was a concubine under Sang-won and couldn't help but stick out her tongue. Sang-won smiled. You're right. I also don't know what she's thinking. Luya shook her head and smiled. If it were me, even if I fell into the pit of riches and honor, I wouldn't be able to continue living like this. With someone holding her down from above, the word rules was enough to make her unable to move. Sang-won was angry and amused at the same time. She scolded her. Shameless lass. What nonsense are you spouting here? Hurry up, I still have matters to attend to. How can you spout such nonsense? If others hear this, they won't laugh at you for being so shameless. Luya quickly smiled and said, This servant is just saying a few words in front of young mistress. This servant's mouth is very tight. The housekeepers and stewards of the Shi family were all familiar with their duties. They had held countless New Year's festivals, so Sang-won didn't have to worry too much. At most, she invited Wang's personal servant, Nanny Jiang, to discuss with her what dishes to prepare and which troupe to book to make Wang happy. Then, she would send someone to inform the second branch. The day passed quickly. At dinner time, Sang-won was again alone. Chong Huan came over to report that young master had a dinner party with a few friends in Qingzhou, so she made up for it. Sang-won didn't say anything and faintly replied, Understood. Seeing that Mama Lee was glaring at her from the side, she could only add a few more words, Serve him carefully, and don't let young master drink too much wine. Hearing Sang-won's instructions, Mama Lee was gratified, and Chong Huan also loudly agreed. However, when Shi Fengju came back, he was dead drunk and unconscious. Sang-won was speechless. She couldn't help but think to herself, Young master won't be happy if he doesn't oppose me, right? Mama Lee was very distressed. She hurriedly ordered the servants to bring water to wipe his face and personally went to cook some hangover soup. The servants in the room were busy for a while before they finished. Seeing that Shi Fengju's face was slightly red and his eyes were heavy, Sang-won could only order the servants to help him to the large bed in the bedroom. She really didn't like the smell of alcohol on his body, so she simply ordered Lu Ya and Hong Yi, tidy up the east wing room and lay out the bedding. I'll sleep there tonight. You guys keep watch outside and serve me well. Lu Ya and the others agreed and were just about to leave when the sleeping Shi Fengju murmured in a low voice, Wan Yang. Wan Yang. Sang-won suddenly froze. Lu Ya and the others also looked at her. Young mistress, young master is calling for you. Mama Lee couldn't help but remind her when she saw her standing still in a daze. Sang-won came back to her senses. She could only go forward and sit on the edge of the bed with difficulty. She gently pushed Shifengju and said, "Young master you." Before she could finish her sentence, Shifengju suddenly raised his hand and held her hand tightly. He said vaguely, Won-young, I'm sorry. Don't be angry. Don't go." Chapter 67. Sang-won's body stiffened, and her heart skipped a beat. She stared at him in a daze. "Young mistress, you should stay. Young master misses you," Mama Lee hurriedly said with a smile and winked at Luya to stop her. Sang-won subconsciously tugged at the hand he was holding, but she didn't expect that the drunken man was surprisingly strong. She didn't dare to use too much force in front of everyone, so she had to give up and reluctantly nodded. "You can leave. I'll be fine here." Mama Lee couldn't wait to hear that. She happily led everyone out and gently closed the door. Sang-won let out a silent sigh and relaxed her body. Without hiding anything, she looked at Shifengju's facial features. Won-young. Shifengju's eyes were half closed and he began to call her name again. "I'm here." Sang-won gently patted the brocade quilt with her other hand. "Are you okay? It's late. I have to sleep," she said as she tried to pull her hand away. Unexpectedly, Shifengju's hand was as tight as an iron hoop. Sang-won couldn't break free no matter how hard she tried. She was a little mad, so she tried to pry off Shifengju's hand one by one. Perhaps because of the pain, Shifengju finally let go. Sang-won rubbed her red wrist and breathed a sigh of relief. Unexpectedly, Shifengju held her wrist tightly again and suddenly opened his eyes. He looked at her and said slowly, "Won-young, don't be angry." "I'm sorry." "I'm not angry." Sang-won held back her anger and said, "Let go of me." "Really?" Shifengju's drunken eyes lit up. The corners of his mouth lifted slightly, and his handsome face showed a happy smile. "Won-young is not angry? If you don't let go, I can't say for sure." "Ah, what are you doing?" Sang-won was flustered and exasperated. She forcefully suppressed her exclamation and let out a low shout. However, Shifengju forcefully pulled her down and she couldn't help but fall onto the bed. In her dizziness, she was heavily pressed down by Shifengju. "Shifengju! Get up, get up." Half of his body was on top of hers, and his head was resting on her neck. His breath reeking of alcohol was hot and cold on her neck. Sang-won was so flustered that she was about to jump out. Her face and ears were red. "Shifengju! Shifengju!" Sang-won gritted her teeth and pushed him away with all her might. He had already closed his eyes and fallen into a deep sleep. He mumbled something and let go of her. In the next second, he changed his position and hugged her even tighter, holding her firmly in his arms. Sang-won was embarrassed and angry. Her face and ears were red as she struggled for a while. She was so tired that she was panting, but she found that her efforts were in vain. She panted weakly and couldn't help but tilt her head to look at the handsome face that was so close to her. He was so close that if she tilted her head, she would touch his face. She could even hear his heartbeat. But, was he really so close to her? Where would he be in the next second? Sang-won closed her eyes and didn't think about it anymore. She fell asleep in a daze. The sky was already bright, and the bedroom became brighter. Shifengju gently opened his eyes and shook his head, which was still a little groggy. He suddenly fell into a muddled state and didn't know where he was. He couldn't be blamed. This big bed had never belonged to him. He was really confused. His gaze slowly shifted and came face to face with a snow-white face and a pair of resentful eyes. Shifengju was jolted awake, and only then did he realize that he was actually on top of Sang-won. His head was buried in her neck and his arms were tightly hugging her. "Ah!" Shifengju's face suddenly changed. He hurriedly let go of her and sat up. He was at a loss and panicked. He patted his forehead in annoyance and said, "I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Won-young." Sang-won closed her eyes tiredly. Her palm-sized face was pale with tear stains. She weakly pulled the brocade quilt and covered herself. She tilted her head and said softly, "You can go out. I want to lie down for a while." Wan Nyang. Shi Fengju moved his lips and nodded sullenly. "Then, I'll go out first. You rest." Getting off the bed, Shi Fengju couldn't help but look back at Sang-won. His mood was very complicated. Regret was certain, but there was also an indescribable sweetness and a strong heartache for no reason. What did he do? He clearly had a contract with her. How could he take advantage of her so shamelessly? This was bad. In her heart, how was he different from a scoundrel? When he thought about how she would view him and how he was such a person in her heart, Shi Fengju felt a deep sense of dejection. He smiled bitterly, put on his clothes hastily, and opened the door to go out. Last night, he was dead drunk. Although he woke up late today, the maidservants did not mind. However, when they saw that the drunk eldest young master had woken up while the eldest young mistress, who did not drink, was still sleeping, the maidservants' eyes were more or less filled with confusion. Shi Fengju felt a little guilty. He coughed awkwardly and said, "Young mistress is tired. Don't disturb her. Let her sleep a little longer." The maid suddenly understood and hurriedly responded with a soft, "Yes." They helped Shi Fengju wash up and didn't mention it again. Mama Li inevitably nagged and complained that he didn't cherish his body and drank so much wine. Shi Fengju patiently promised that he wouldn't do it again next time. Only then did Mama Li stop. She asked him with concern if he was feeling unwell. Was his head still dizzy? Did it hurt? Shi Fengju hurriedly smiled and said he was fine. Mama Li was still worried. She ordered someone to bring the hangover soup and forced Shi Fengju to drink it. Does young master want to eat breakfast first, or wait for young mistress to eat together? Xingji asked. Shi Fengju couldn't help but glance in the direction of the bedroom. When he thought of Sang-won, his feelings became complicated again. He waved his hand and said, "Bring it up first. For young mistress." When the words came to his mouth, he realized that he didn't know what she liked to eat or what her tastes were like. When he thought of the dishes she carefully prepared for him every time, Shi Fengju felt even worse. Tell the kitchen to make whatever young mistress likes to eat. That's right, stew a bowl of good quality bird's nest and bring it to her when she wakes up. Everyone was stunned. Since when did young master start to care about such trivial matters? The moment of silence made the sensitive Shi Fengju feel very awkward. He coughed heavily in an unnatural manner. Everyone seemed to wake up from a dream. Mama Li immediately pulled a long face and scolded, "What are you all standing there for? Didn't you hear what young master said? Hurry up and leave." "Yes." Everyone hurriedly dispersed. Shi Fengju absent-mindedly ate breakfast. It tasted like chewing wax and he couldn't taste anything. "Young master, do you have a bad appetite? Is it because the food I made this morning wasn't to your liking?" Mama Li asked with concern. Shi Fengju hurriedly smiled and said, "No, I'm done." "But young master, you only used so little." Mama Li's heart ached. She said without any doubt, "It must be because you drank too much last night that you lost your appetite. Hongyi, bring another bowl of hangover soup." Upon hearing this, Shi Fengju felt dizzy. The hangover soup really didn't taste good. She forced him to drink bowl after bowl. When did his wet nurse become so uncaring towards him? "No need, no need." Shi Fengju hurriedly stood up and said, "I'll go take a look at Wan Nyang. I'll have an appetite in a while." Mama Li originally wanted to persuade him, but after hearing his words, she gave up. She nodded and smiled. "You were so drunk last night. Young mistress must be exhausted after taking care of you all night. It's good that you spend more time with her." Shi Fengju smiled and nodded. He turned around and went back into the bedroom. Sang-won was still lying on her side. When she heard the noise, she raised her eyebrows slightly and called out softly, "Luya?" "It's me." Shi Fengju walked over and sat on the edge of the bed. Sang-won's body stiffened, but she didn't turn around. Young master, is there anything else? Yes. Shi Fengju said seriously, I do have something to tell you. Sangwon's lips moved slightly. She said indifferently, then say it. Shi Fengju repeated the words that had been hovering in his heart a few times. Finally, he gathered his courage and said, Wan Nyang, I'll take responsibility for what happened last night. What? Sangwon immediately sat up. Her beautiful eyes were filled with tears. What did you say? I said, I'll take responsibility for you, Wan Nyang. Shi Fengju felt as if a heavy burden had been lifted off his shoulders. No matter what, he was in the wrong last night. Since he had taken advantage of her, he couldn't avoid it. He couldn't let her suffer. Don't mention our previous agreement again. You'll always be Shi Fengju's legal wife. This time, I won't go back on my word. Shi Fengju said quickly. After he finished speaking, he felt a wave of relief in his heart. It was as if a huge rock that had been pressing down on his heart for a long time had been removed. No. Sangwon's eyes were cold. She lowered her eyes and said indifferently, I don't understand what young master is talking about. What responsibility? What responsibility do you want to take? What does this have to do with Wan Nyang? Wan Nyang, I know I was drunk last night. I shouldn't have. You were drunk last night. Sangwon interrupted him and said word by word, You were drunk last night and then fell asleep. That's all. She should be happy, shouldn't she? Hearing him say this, she didn't have to worry about the future anymore. She also didn't have to worry about the Sang family being gossiped about. However, she didn't want to. She still didn't want to. She didn't want to live her life again. She didn't want to be so conflicted and in so much pain. What was the use of his words, no matter how pleasant they sounded? She believed in him, but Gu Fengzi had a way to make him go against his will. As long as Gu Fengzi was here, as long as Gu Fengzi was in this family, she would never have peace. She didn't want to fight with her for the rest of her life. That was too tiring. Why bother? You're still angry at me, aren't you? Shi Fengju became agitated. He couldn't help but put his hands on her shoulders. Wan Nyang, I'm sorry. I apologize to you. You didn't do anything wrong. I'm not angry. Sangwon struggled to break free from his hands. I just hope that young master doesn't forget what you promised me. Don't make me look down on you. Shi Fengju's face immediately turned snow white. No one had ever spoken to him like this before. No one. He looked at Sangwon's face in disbelief. He couldn't believe that those words had come out of her red, full lips. She would rather lie to herself than let him take responsibility. She only wanted to leave him. Shi Fengju's heart became sour and irritated. A feeling called jealousy was quietly growing in his heart. He didn't know what he was jealous of. He only knew that when he heard her say that she still wanted to leave, he felt an indescribable pain. As you wish. Shi Fengju gritted his teeth. His face was cold as he suddenly got up and left. However, he didn't know that behind him, 2 lines of tears were falling from Sangwon's eyes, gently sliding down her snow-white cheeks. Chapter 68. Shi Fengju didn't return even when it was dark. In a private room on the 3rd floor of the Jade Lotus House located in the commercial center of Qingzhou, Shi Fengju was drinking with a man wearing a royal blue robe embroidered with dark patterns on the jade wall. The man was tall, handsome, and full of spirit. He sat opposite Shi Fengju with a smile in his eyes. It was Zhuang Weixian. It was a sin. Their mothers didn't like each other and fought to the death, but they were good brothers who appreciated each other. This time, Shi Fengju went on a long journey. If Madame Zhuang didn't insist on Zhuang Weixian staying behind for a blind date, Zhuang Weixian would have gone with him as usual. What's wrong? Didn't you drink enough last night? You still want to drink? You weren't like this before. Are you happy that your long-cherished wish is about to be fulfilled? Zhuang Weixian laughed and slapped the table. It's true that people are in high spirits when they're in a good mood. A figure subconsciously flashed through his mind. That elegant and refined temperament, that indescribable firmness within that gentleness, and that intoxicating abacus with one hand. Such a gentle and elegant woman, who would have thought that her life would be so hard? She met a husband who already had someone in his heart and was destined not to care about her for the rest of her life. Her life was almost foreseeable. She was destined to sit quietly in that gorgeous cage, savoring the passing of time until the flowers withered and her beauty faded. Good news. Shi Fengju's eyes were slightly tired and a little drunk. He laughed. What good news? Why? Did your mother arrange a marriage for you? Which family's girl is she from? What does it have to do with me? Zhuang Weixian was angry and amused. He rolled his eyes at him. Isn't your childhood sweetheart cousin about to marry into the family? Cousin? Shi Fengju was stunned. His lips curled into a mocking smile. If you didn't mention it, I would have forgotten. Yes, she's about to get her wish. I think you are really drunk, and very drunk. Zhuang Weixian said with absolute certainty, or you are so happy that you are dizzy and talking nonsense. Shi Fengju just shook his head and smiled. He played with the jade cup in his hand, admiring the carved patterns of twining branches. Zhuang Weixian finally noticed that something was wrong and asked curiously, "What's wrong? Did something happen?" Shi Fengju slowly put down the jade cup and looked at Zhuang Weixian seriously. You're actually quite familiar with Fengzi. Tell me, what kind of person is she? What? Shi Fengju waved his hand and said with a smile, We're brothers. There's nothing to hide behind closed doors. Don't lie to me. Tell me, what kind of person do you think he is? What could anyone say? Zhuang Weixian was still in a daze. Although they were brothers, it wasn't a gentleman's behavior to criticize his brother's woman in front of him. Only an idiot would do such a thing. Moreover, this guy was obviously drunk and didn't choose his words carefully. When he sobers up, Zhuang Weixian wouldn't even have a place to cry. Shi Fengju saw that Zhuang Weixian didn't say anything and chuckled before asking again, If I asked you to marry her, would you? No. Zhuang Weixian was shocked and blurted out. That elegant figure subconsciously flashed through her mind, and she felt indignant. She stared at Shi Fengju and said, Don't you already have a wife? Does your cousin want to be your second wife? Shi Fengju smiled slightly and shook his head. No. Why not? Fengzi is also a good person. Zhuang Weixian sighed and surrendered. He smiled bitterly. She's not my type. Are you satisfied with this answer? But in his heart, he thought, she clearly knows that you are engaged, yet she didn't avoid arousing suspicion and instead took the initiative to get close to you. This kind of woman has no sense of shame or morality, so what's there to like? With her personality, if she says she's willing to be a concubine, she can only lie to you. You can't see Mount Tai. When the time comes, you'll know what's good for you. Poor Miss Sang. Damn it, why am I thinking of her again? Zhuang Weixian secretly pinched his own palm. Shi Fengju knew that he couldn't force him to say anything else. He laughed at himself and said, You're much better than me. At least you know what you want. Unlike me. But I don't have anything. Zhuang Weixian laughed at himself. You have a beautiful wife and concubines. Let's not talk about this anymore. Shi Fengju smiled bitterly and shook his head. He thought for a moment and said, If you suddenly found out that the person you've liked for many years is not the kind of person you like, what would you do? Simple, then we'll just break up. We merchants don't have so many stupid rules. Zhuang Weixian said casually. Only after he said it did he realize that something was wrong. He couldn't help but look at him strangely. I say, what's wrong with you today? You're not talking about yourself, are you? You and Miss Gu. Shi Fengju didn't say anything, which meant that he tacitly agreed with Zhuang Weixian's words. Zhuang Weixian smiled and said, If that's the case, why do you still welcome her into the family? She's your cousin after all. Do you have the heart to let her suffer? Shi Fengju shook his head. If she insists, then I can't say anything. Thinking of Gu Fengzi's crying and aggressive attitude, Shi Fengju felt a wave of disgust. Although Zhuang Weixian was very curious, he knew that it wasn't appropriate to ask about this matter. He smiled and said, "Forget it. If she insists, then why are you still so conflicted? Just welcome her into the family and raise her. After all, your Shi family can afford to raise 100 more." "What nonsense are you talking about?" Shi Fengju glared at him, but there was a smile on his face. "That's right, just raise her." However, Wan Yang, thinking of Sang Wan who insisted on leaving, Shi Fengju's heart was in a mess. However, this matter couldn't be told to outsiders, not even to Zhuang Weixian. With a cup of pear blossom spring burning hot in his throat, Shi Fengju secretly made a decision. "I won't let her leave so easily." Shi Fengju returned drunk in the middle of the night. Fortunately, Zhuang Weixian managed to persuade him not to be so drunk last night. Although he was groggy, there was still a trace of clarity in his mind. Shi Fengju didn't want to disturb Sang Wan and ordered Chong Huan to help him back to the study. Chong Huan didn't dare to disobey. Seeing her master so drunk, she also didn't dare to ignore it. She hurriedly sent someone to report to Ning Garden. Sang Wan had already fallen asleep at that time. Mama Li hurriedly brought someone to the study to take a look. She couldn't help but feel distressed. She hurriedly boiled a hangover soup and brought it over. She ordered Lu Ye to stay in the study with a maid to serve her. By right, the matter should have ended there. However, when Wang found out about it the next day, she became unhappy. Her son had always done things with a sense of propriety. It was very rare for him to return home drunk. It was even more unprecedented for him to be drunk for 2 consecutive nights. Moreover, he went straight to the study to sleep the second night. Thinking of Gu Fengzi's marriage, Wang naturally thought of Sang Wan. She believed that Sang Wan was unhappy and quarreled with him. She made him feel annoyed and went out to drink. The more Wang thought about it, the angrier she became. The angrier she was, the more distressed she felt for her son. And the more distressed she felt for her son, the more annoyed she felt at Sang Wan. Wasn't it just taking in a concubine? She had clearly promised, but who knew that she would torment her son behind his back? Saying one thing in public and another behind his back was simply outrageous. Thus, early in the morning, Wang called Sang Wan over to reprimand her. "What did Fengju do last night?" Wang asked. Wang had always shown her emotions on her face. Although she tried her best to remain calm, Sang Wan could still see her tense face and stiff tone. But she was also puzzled and did not know what was going on. She smiled and said, "He said he went out to eat with a friend." "Then when did he come back?" Wang held back her anger. Sang Wan had a bad premonition. She lowered her eyes and shook her head. I was already asleep. I don't know. Young master rested in the study last night. I don't know." Wang slammed the table and said angrily, "He is your husband, not someone else. As his wife, how can you not care about your husband? Regardless of whether he is dead or alive outside, you went to sleep first? And you can even sleep. You even let him rest in the study?" That study was cold and cheerless. There was no tea or water. Is that even a place to rest? How could the servants be so clumsy when it came to serving people? My poor son, marrying a wife is like not marrying at all. There isn't even anyone who cares about him. If it wasn't for Mama Li yesterday, think about it, he would have suffered a lot last night. If he were to catch a cold or fall sick, how would you feel? The more Wang spoke, the more distressed she felt and her face became uglier. "Mother, daughter-in-law knows her mistake. It's daughter-in-law's fault, please punish me." Sang Wan was like a bolt from the blue. She hurriedly knelt in front of Wang. She finally understood that she really did not have the right to throw a tantrum and throw a tantrum. Could it be that he was too lenient with her that his temper grew, causing him to be so muddle-headed? Sang Wan secretly mocked herself. He was too lenient with her? Wang said angrily, "After coming back for 2 days, he has been drinking outside for 2 consecutive nights. I didn't know when my son became so addicted to alcohol. Wan Yang, I know you are angry. Even if you don't say it out loud, you might think so in your heart. But you can't keep throwing a tantrum like this. Fengju has been working so hard outside for the past few months, but when he came back, you didn't serve him well and even threw a tantrum to annoy him. How can a daughter-in-law be like you? You don't care about your husband at all. Sangwon was embarrassed and angry. Her mother-in-law's words were too serious and she could not accept it. Sangwon knew that if she tried to defend herself, her mother-in-law would be even angrier. But if she did not defend herself, it would be equivalent to admitting what she said, which would be disadvantageous to her. Mother, Won Young doesn't dare. Won Young didn't throw a tantrum. Won Young really didn't. Wong was indeed even more annoyed. I know my son best. If he wasn't annoyed, he wouldn't have gone out to drink like this. This daughter-in-law doesn't dare to interfere with my husband's matters. If he says it, then this daughter-in-law will listen. If he doesn't say it, then this daughter-in-law doesn't dare to ask. Whether he is annoyed or not, this daughter-in-law really doesn't know. He said that he went out to eat, so this daughter-in-law doesn't know the situation and doesn't know why he got so drunk. This is what mother taught me. This daughter-in-law will remember it from now on. In the future, I will ask more. You. Wong was at a loss for words. Although she was angry at Sangwon for talking back, she calmed down a little and listened to her words. Sangwon saw that the situation had taken a turn for the better and quickly continued, Mother, this daughter-in-law really has no objection to cousin Fengju marrying into the family. As the daughter-in-law of the Shi family, how can this daughter-in-law not have a bit of tolerance? Besides, this matter will happen sooner or later. What difference does it make if it happens earlier or later? If this daughter-in-law was angry about this, then this daughter-in-law would have already gotten over it. Why would this daughter-in-law wait until now? Wong was silent, but her expression slowly returned to normal. After a while she said, Do you really think so? Chapter 69. Sangwon hurriedly nodded. Yes, mother. This daughter-in-law doesn't dare to lie to mother. To be honest, this daughter-in-law is in the wrong. I should have taken the initiative to care for my husband. Then, this wouldn't have happened. In the future, when my husband goes out to socialize again, this daughter-in-law will definitely ask someone to find out. If he doesn't return by the end of the night, this daughter-in-law will ask someone to see what's going on. This daughter-in-law understands. Wong frowned slightly and hurriedly said, There's no need for that. It's normal for a man to socialize outside. Wouldn't it be embarrassing for him to ask around? If he returns late in the future, you just have to wait. If he comes back drunk again, you have to persuade him. Mother is still thoughtful. This daughter-in-law understands. This daughter-in-law will remember this in her heart. There definitely won't be a next time. Sangwon flattered her while expressing her determination. Wong sighed and waved her hand. Forget it. Get up. Don't kneel. It's good that you know. It's not that mother doesn't care about you, but think about it. Who do we rely on to live a luxurious life at home? Isn't it because of a man who works hard outside? What's wrong with sleeping a little late occasionally? Men work so hard outside, but when they return home, they can't relax. If there's no one to serve them attentively, what will they become? Don't tell me you don't care about your own man. Sangwon said, If he's not my man, it's not my place to care about him. She hurriedly nodded and gently got up. She repeatedly expressed her determination to Wong. Wong's expression finally relaxed. Nanny Jiang watched coldly from the sidelines and couldn't help but secretly marvel. She couldn't tell that eldest young mistress wasn't simple. With just a few words, she managed to calm eldest young mistress's anger. As an experienced and trusted nanny, Nanny Jiang understood Wong's temperament better than Mama Li. Wong loved to go down a dead end and let her imagination run wild. When she scolded someone, there was no reason for her to do so. Other than Gu Fengzi, Nanny Jiang had never seen anyone who could coax her with just a few words. Even Gu Fengzi would not let it go so easily. As soon as it ended, Shi Fengju also rushed over after receiving news from Mama Li. Seeing that the atmosphere was not as tense as he had imagined, Shi Fengju secretly sighed in relief. He could not help but glance at Sang Wan, then stepped forward to greet his mother with a smile. Wang's anger, which had just been extinguished, flared up again. She scolded Shi Fengju angrily and pitifully. Shi Fengju was very experienced in dealing with his own mother. In a short while, he managed to make Wang happy again. "What's wrong with you? You're not a drinker. I've never been like this before. What's wrong? Hurry up and tell me." Wang finished her tantrum and began to interrogate him again. "It's nothing." Shi Fengju smiled casually and said, "It's just that we haven't seen each other for a long time, so we drank a little too much." "Liar." Wang snorted. "Didn't we have a gathering a few days ago? Why did we gather again yesterday?" Shi Fengju could only say, "A few days ago, it was a group of friends. Yesterday, it was just me and the young master of the Zhuang family. He, was in a bad mood, so he dragged me to drink with him. After a while, I drank a little too much." Shi Fengju pushed all the blame onto Zhuang Weixian. Upon hearing that he had been with the Zhuang family last night, Wang became even more unhappy. She could not help but snort. "Then there's no good person in the Zhuang family. And you still like to hang out with their young master. Humph, I don't think he has any good intentions. You just came home, but he called you out to drink as much as he could." "Mother." Shi Fengju could only smile vaguely and say, "Our families have business dealings." Afraid that his mother would continue to nag, Shi Fengju rubbed his forehead and inadvertently showed a bit of pain on his face. Wang saw this and felt distressed. She hurriedly said, "Does your head still hurt?" She could not help but scold Shi Fengju a few more times. Then she urged Shi Fengju to go back and rest. Shi Fengju complied and stood up. However, his eyes glanced at Sang Wan. "Wan Yang, you should go back too. Hurry and help your husband," Wang said as expected. "Yes, mother." Sang Wan stood up and gently supported Shi Fengju's arm. Shi Fengju felt a strange feeling in his heart. He could not help but turn to look at Sang Wan. Seeing that her eyebrows were as light as a painting and that she was as calm as the wind, he felt a sense of loss. "Wait." Wang suddenly stopped him and asked Shi Fengju, "Even if you came back late last night, why didn't you go back to Ning Garden? Why did you go back to the cold and quiet study?" Seeing that her mother-in-law had brought up the past again, Sang Wan suddenly felt like crying but had no tears. She clenched her fists. Shi Fengju chuckled and said somewhat embarrassedly, "Actually, I just wanted to rest in the study last night and then go back to Ning Garden. Who would have thought that after resting, I couldn't get up?" "Really?" Wang looked at the two of them suspiciously. "You two didn't quarrel? How could that be?" Shi Fengju laughed. In order to prove to Wang, he raised his hand and gently put it on Sang Wan's shoulder. He smiled and said, "Wan Yang has such a good temper. How could she quarrel with me? Besides, your son is not that kind of person. We're fine, aren't we, Wan Yang?" Sang Wan reluctantly looked up at him and nodded with a smile. "Mother, we're really fine." "That's good." Wang was finally relieved. She said impatiently, "There have been too many things happening recently. It's making me very upset. Don't make more trouble for me." Shi Fengju and Sang Wan hurriedly agreed. After leaving the main courtyard, Sang Wan saw that Shi Fengju's arm was still on her shoulder. She paused and looked at him. Shi Fengju felt a little warm in his heart when he saw the angry expression on her face. He was afraid that he would annoy her again and didn't dare to be rash. He smiled awkwardly and quickly withdrew his hand. "I'm sorry. I've implicated you. Mother doesn't mean what she says. In fact, she's very kind. Don't be angry." Sang Wan was stunned and couldn't help but sigh. When did he start to speak to her so carefully? It seemed like he was being lenient. He had allowed her to become braver. After what happened just now, Sang Wan knew that her unconscious behavior was very dangerous. If she wasn't careful, she would be reprimanded by her mother-in-law. She softened her expression and smiled. Why would I be angry with mother? Besides, it was my fault last night. Shi Fengju was delighted. He quickly smiled and said, I don't blame you. It was my own fault. Forget it. Let's not talk about it. Let's go back to Ning Garden. Sangwon smiled and nodded. And she followed him back. In the blink of an eye, it was the 6th of August. Because they were taking in a concubine and marrying into the family during the 100-day mourning period, they couldn't be any more low-key. All the banquets were dismissed and no one from the Sang family came. Fong couldn't help but grumble in dissatisfaction. However, when she thought about how Gu Fengzi still had 3 more years of mourning before she could consummate her marriage with Shi Fengju, she knew that Sangwon's child would be able to walk by then. Gu Fengzi wouldn't be able to threaten her. Only then did she calm down. Early in the morning, Gu Fengzi first boarded a carriage from the Gu family's courtyard. In the afternoon, she arrived outside Qingzhou City and boarded a small sedan chair. Seeing the small sedan chair that came to pick her up, it was simple and unadorned. Gu Fengzi was immediately dissatisfied. She then saw that only 2 servants and 2 servant girls from the Shi family were there to pick her up. They were also dressed in simple green and blue clothes. There wasn't even a red flower in their hair. There wasn't even a hint of happiness in their bodies. This made her even more unhappy. Auntie Wu, who arranged for this sedan chair? Gu Fengzi asked with a frown. Auntie Wu replied, replying to Miss Gu, it was arranged by Mama Li. Young mistress gave her approval. Oh. Gu Fengzi said coldly, what did old mistress and young master mean? They didn't say anything? Auntie Wu couldn't help but feel a little disdainful. She thought to herself, what more do you want to marry into the family as a concubine? It's not like you don't know that old mistress hates white matters the most. Old mistress gave full authority to young mistress and Mama Li to handle this matter. Old mistress didn't ask. Auntie Wu replied calmly. I knew that auntie didn't know about this. It must be Sangwon, that be *tch, who took the opportunity to ridicule me. You want to show me who's boss? You're not worthy. Gu Fengzi immediately had an idea. She refused to get into the sedan chair and ordered Auntie Wu, carry this sedan chair back and let auntie take a look. Ah! Auntie Wu and the servant girls who came to pick her up were stunned. Miss Gu, why is this? Gu Fengzi coldly snorted, what kind of family is the Shi family? The richest family in Qingzhou. I'm also auntie's niece. If I were to sit in such a shabby sedan chair and enter the Shi family today, wouldn't I be throwing the Shi family's face away? Not only would I throw the Shi family's face away, I'm afraid that outsiders would say that auntie is harsh on me as a niece. Big sister is inexperienced and actually did such a careless thing, ruining the Shi family's reputation and auntie's. Lon Xiang, you go with her and tell auntie this. As Wang had already instructed, Gu Fengzi would still be addressed as Miss Gu after entering the Shi family, and would only change the way of addressing her after 3 years of marriage. Thus, Gu Fengzi still addressed Wang as before. Auntie Wu was suddenly put in a difficult position. She knew how powerful Mama Li was, and she also knew that Mama Li didn't like Miss Gu. Logically speaking, this sedan chair could have been better, but Mama Li's arrangement was in accordance with the rules, and no one would be able to find fault with it. Miss Gu bypassed Mama Li and purposely dragged the matter to young mistress. Anyone with a discerning eye could tell what her intentions were. Auntie Wu couldn't help but secretly grumble. How did I get involved in such muddy water? Young mistress was currently in the Shi family's favor. Not only did she coax old mistress into obedience, but young master also respected her very much. Miss Gu's words were not something that Auntie Wu wanted to hear, let alone relay them. Miss Gu, old slave, let's just forget about it. Why do you have to be so nosy? Anyway, our group won't be conspicuous. We'll just enter from the side gate and no one will know. Besides, you're still in mourning, isn't this? Shut up. Before Auntie Wu could finish, Gu Fengzi was already so angry that her eyebrows were raised and her face turned pale. Auntie Wu's words undoubtedly added fuel to the fire, poking at her sore spot and penetrating deep into her bones. Gu Fengzi didn't know how many times she had imagined the scene and how lively it would be when she married into the Shi family. Even if there wasn't a red sedan chair, it would still be a joyous occasion with loud music. Never in her wildest dreams would she have thought that just a few people and a small sedan chair would be able to carry her in. Chapter 70. Not only was it inconspicuous, but it was also a side gate. These words ruthlessly stimulated Gu Fengzi's nerves, causing her to be so angry that she almost went crazy. How could she swallow this grievance? It's not up to you to talk in front of me. Seeing that today is a good day, I can't be bothered to argue with you. Go back to the household immediately and speak according to my words. What are you waiting for? Go. Gu Fengzi pointed at Auntie Wu and shouted with a frosty face. Auntie Wu was the daughter-in-law of the Shi family. Her husband was in charge of the Shi family's 3 farmsteads and she had been working in the Shi family for many years. Even if Sang Wan asked her questions, she would politely smile and call her sister-in-law Wu. She was angered by Gu Fengzi's outburst in front of everyone and her face turned yellow. Her lips trembled and she could not speak for a long time. Still in a daze? Why aren't you leaving? Gu Fengzi said again. Yes, old slave will go now. Auntie Wu did not dare to offend her master and gritted her teeth and swallowed her anger. Naturally, she cursed the villain in her heart. What kind of thing was this? She had not even entered the Shi family and yet she was already so frivolous. She did not even deserve to be a master to carry the young mistress's shoes. Rushing to enter the family in the middle of the mourning period, she was just an item that no one wanted. Lan Xiang is Miss Gu's personal maidservant. It's better for her to stay and serve Miss Gu. Old slave and the 2 old sisters can report back together. Fifth auntie said with a smile. Gu Fengzi thought about it and agreed. If Lan Xiang went, she might as well let them report it themselves. Gu Fengzi's expression softened and she looked at Auntie Wu. When you go back and see old mistress, you don't need me to teach you what to say, do you? Auntie Wu quickly smiled. Old slave knows. It was old slave's idea. Old slave felt that it was inappropriate to go back and ask for instructions. It was for the sake of the Shi family's face and has nothing to do with Miss Gu. Gu Fengzi nodded with satisfaction. Then go and come back quickly. If you do it well, I will reward you handsomely. If you dare to play any tricks on me, just don't let me find out later. Auntie Wu was shocked. She quickly lowered her head and said, Old slave doesn't dare, old slave doesn't dare. Auntie Wu initially wanted to complain, but after being scared by Gu Fengzi, she immediately retracted her thoughts. After all, there was a difference between master and servant. If Gu Fengzi wanted to find out, it would be easy for him to find an excuse to punish her. How could she avoid it? Auntie Wu didn't dare to stir up trouble in front of her master, but that didn't mean that she didn't dare to slack off. Auntie Wu had a belly full of anger that she needed to vent, so she brought her people into the city unhurriedly. On the way, she even generously took out money to treat everyone to tea and snacks. Everyone was happy to have something good to eat, and they could also steal some time to pass the time. Of course, they wouldn't complain. Everyone chatted and laughed in the tea house, and it was very lively. After spending about 2 hours, they finally leisurely returned to the Fu. After returning to the Fu, Auntie Wu went to see Wang and told her everything that Gu Fengzi had taught her. Of course, she didn't say that it was Gu Fengzi's idea. She only said that it was her own idea. When Wang heard this, she couldn't help but get angry, meddlesome. Who told you to act on your own? I told you to go pick her up, but you left the young miss there and came back with an empty sedan chair. What is this? Auntie Wu felt wronged. She lightly slapped her mouth and smiled. Old slave deserves to die. Old slave deserves to die. But old slave did this for the sake of the Shi family's reputation. Old mistress. Nonsense. Wang frowned. She thought for a moment and said, Was there a problem with the sedan chair? No. Auntie Wu hurriedly shook her head. Even though Gu Fengzi was supporting this matter, Auntie Wu didn't have the guts to criticize Mama Li for not doing a good job. That's right, it's just that old slave felt that it was too plain, so... Oh, so you just took the initiative to bring the empty sedan chair back? Mammy Lee snorted and came in from the outside unhurriedly. After greeting Wang, she said to Auntie Wu, "It's inauspicious that the sedan chair used to welcome the newlyweds is empty when they go out and come back. Younger sister Wu, you're not young anymore. Why are you so muddle-headed? Or have you really become muddle-headed?" Old slave. Auntie Wu's face turned yellow. She slapped her own mouth and said, "The old slave was impulsive. Please forgive me, old mistress. The old slave will turn back now, turn back now." "Wait." Mama Lee calmly said, "Let's not talk about whether you're muddle-headed or not. I'm also old. Maybe I'm muddle-headed. It's better to bring the sedan chair in and let old mistress see it for herself. Let's see if I've done something wrong and tarnished the dignity of the Sher family." "Oh, older sister, what are you saying? I don't have to worry about you handling things. How could there be anything wrong?" "It's not that I want to say this, but even if all the servants in this fu don't care about the dignity of our fu, you definitely won't. There's no need to see it, there's no need to see it," Wang quickly said with a smile as she ordered Auntie Wu to apologize. Auntie Wu was like a mouse caught in a bellows. She couldn't please either side. In her heart, she cursed Gu Fongzi to death. But at this time, what else could she do but obediently apologize and admit her mistake? How could Mama Lee not know this? Auntie Wu wasn't a meddlesome person. Besides, she wasn't stupid. She wouldn't jump out to criticize her. Her return was definitely related to that little vixen, Gu Fongzi. Even so, she still refused to settle down and wanted to splash dirty water on her and young mistress. If she didn't teach her a lesson, she would really think that everyone else was a fool and let her play with them. "Young mistress, it's better to bring the sedan chair in. The old slave must clearly confess this matter in front of young mistress today. Otherwise, people will think that the old slave is deliberately playing dirty tricks. The old slave didn't really agree with young mistress in the past, but the old slave still knows his priorities. He wouldn't dare to joke about the Sher family's reputation and young mistress's reputation." Mama Lee's words were powerful and clear. Wang couldn't refute and could only agree. Auntie Wu heaved a sigh of relief and hurriedly asked someone to bring the sedan chair in. Anyway, she had already said what needed to be said. The sedan chair had also been sent to old mistress. No matter what happened next, it had nothing to do with her. When the sedan chair was brought in, Mama Lee said, "Young mistress, please take a look. This sedan chair was specially made by a craftsman. The materials used are all of the best quality. The cushions inside were also soft, and the curtains of the palanquin were sewn with the finest blue silk. If this isn't good, then what is?" She then sighed. "Young mistress is just past the 7th day of the mourning period. How can this sedan chair not be plain? Do you want it to be decorated with red decorations? That old Master Gu is watching from the sky. If it's really decorated with red decorations, then people will poke at us behind our backs and say that our Sher family doesn't know the rules." Wang heard Auntie Wu's words and felt that it was a little plain at first glance. Now that she heard Mama Lee's words, she felt that she was right and nodded. "Old sister, you're right. That's the right way to go. Auntie Wu, you've indeed done something foolish. Yes, it's the old slave's fault. The old slave shouldn't have been so hot-headed. It's the old slave's fault." Auntie Wu repeatedly apologized and hurried to fetch Gu Fongzi back. However, Mama Lee stopped her and smiled. "Younger sister Wu, it's true that you've been hot-headed today. I've lived for so long, but I've never seen a sedan chair used to fetch a new person into the household empty. Since this sedan chair has returned, it can't be used again. Otherwise, it'll be inauspicious. It's better to change to another sedan chair." Auntie Wu was secretly happy, but she spoke with difficulty. "Sister Lee is right. But where can we find a new sedan chair in such a hurry? Young Mistress Gu is still waiting outside the city." "You're asking me? I can't make one appear for you." Mama Lee sneered. Wang thought for a moment and frowned. "Forget it, just bring one over." Remember to change the curtains to a plain color and remove all the decorations. We can't let Fongzi keep waiting. As Wang spoke, she sighed and secretly thought to herself, could it be that I've been possessed? Why is everything going so wrong? Auntie Wu quickly agreed and asked with a smile, then when the old slave has prepared the sedan chair, should I bring it over for old mistress to take a look? There's no need. Quickly go and fetch her. Wang became impatient and scolded with a frown, you can't even handle such a small matter well. I think you don't need to do anything in the future. Auntie Wu was so frightened that she did not dare to utter a word and hurriedly left. Gu Fongzi waited in the backyard of the small inn where she was resting. When the sun gradually set, she finally saw Auntie Wu and her entourage who were late. Why are you so slow? Young mistress is still waiting. Hurry up. Lan Xiang had long been waiting at the entrance for an unknown number of times. When she saw the sedan chair that they brought back, Lan Xiang's eyes widened. She pointed at the sedan chair and asked Auntie Wu, You brought back such a sedan chair in such a short time? It's even worse than the previous one. The previous sedan chair was at least new, but this one looked like it was put together at the last minute. The sedan chair pole, the sedan chair body, and the half-new curtains, no matter how one looked at it, it looked shabby. How did it look like a sedan chair used to welcome newcomers? It was not much better than the ones rented by ordinary families. Auntie Wu thought to herself, hey, your eyesight is quite good. It's even worse than the previous one. Otherwise, wouldn't this old lady have made a trip for nothing and suffered all that anger for nothing? When we go in and see young Mistress Gu, I have something to say. Towards Gu Fongzi's servant, Auntie Wu did not have such a good attitude. She snorted and said, if you say that you can make the decision, then I'll go back and change it again. How would Lan Xiang dare to bear such responsibility? Moreover, the sun was already setting. She snorted unhappily and glared at Auntie Wu. She thought to herself, you'll suffer when you see young mistress later. She turned around and pulled a long face as she said, come with me. When Gu Fongzi saw this, she flew into a rage. She pointed at Auntie Wu with a trembling finger and said after a while, it's fine if you only came back after half a day, but you actually brought back such a plaything. What do you mean? Whose idea was this? Was it elder sister's idea? She's so ruthless. She's deliberately making things difficult for me, isn't she? Young Mistress Gu, don't be anxious. Listen to old slave slowly. Auntie Wu smiled and said, when we entered the city, we were blocked and had no choice but to take a detour. We only entered the residence after a while. When old slave returned home, he did not even have a sip of tea and rushed to see first Mistress Gu. As she spoke, Auntie Wu told Gu Fongzi everything that had happened and said, young Mistress Gu, if you don't believe me, you can ask around when you enter the residence. At that time, all the maidens serving first mistress were present. If young Mistress Gu is not satisfied, how about old slave go back and talk to first Mistress Gu? Chapter 71. Gu Fongzi was rendered speechless by her words. She fiercely glared at Auntie Wu and raised her chin with a sneer. No need. Let's go into the manor. Wouldn't it have been better if you did this earlier? Why did you have to make things difficult for yourself? Auntie Wu sneered in her heart. You want to use this to humiliate me and affect my good mood? In your dreams. You all think too simply of me. Once we enter the manor, there will be plenty of time to settle accounts with each and every one of you. Gu Fongzi also sneered in her heart. After getting into the old sedan, the curtain fell and the sedan bearers gently lifted it up. They swayed as they walked step by step towards Qingzhou City. Gu Fongzi, who was in the sedan, was a little dazed and startled. Was this considered her getting married? She lowered her head to look at the plain white clothes on her body, the indigo blue shoes, and the simple silver hairpin. She suddenly felt so wronged that she wanted to cry. This was her wedding? She was today's bride? There was no wedding procession, no phoenix coronet, and not even a proper sedan chair. It was a far cry from what she had imagined. If it wasn't for the fact that she was experiencing it today, if someone had told her that her wedding would be like this, she wouldn't have believed it. "Oh, what are you doing?" The sedan suddenly swayed, causing Gu Fengzi's forehead to hit the wall. She couldn't help but become angry. "Young miss, it's just that a carriage rushed over. Luckily, we avoided it. Are you all right?" Lan Xiang hurriedly said. "I'm fine. Let's go," Gu Fengzi said sullenly. She really hit the nail on the head. Gently rubbing her aching forehead, Gu Fengzi suddenly felt a heart-wrenching depression and desolation. Tears streamed down her face without warning. The sedan entered through the side gate and was directly carried into Peony Park. The entire journey was peaceful, without a single ripple. It was as if whether the sedan came in or not, or who came in, had nothing to do with the people in the manor. Gu Fengzi's heart sank even more. "Miss Biao, we're here. Please get off the sedan chair." The sedan chair finally stopped. Auntie Wu cleared her throat and said. When the sedan stopped, Lan Xiang hurriedly lifted the curtain and helped Gu Fengzi down from the sedan. Naturally, there wasn't any festive color in his eyes. On the contrary, it was much colder and more desolate than before. After a moment of absent-mindedness, Gu Fengzi suddenly realized what was wrong. The 2 rows of sandalwood-framed 6-sided lanterns with tassels that were originally hanging under the porch were all gone. The various colorful potted flowers in the courtyard and on the porch under the stairs were all gone as well. In its place were yellow and white chrysanthemums. No wonder this courtyard made people feel uncomfortable. "Miss Biao, do you have any other orders? If not, then the old slave and the others will leave first," Aunt Wu said while rubbing her hands. "There's nothing else. You guys can go." Gu Fengzi waved her hand. At this moment, she was filled with anxiety. She desperately wanted to see what the house was like and whether it had been altered by someone. How could he be in the mood to talk to Auntie Wu? Before she finished speaking, she had already hurriedly walked forward. "Then we servants will take our leave." Aunt Wu and the others were very disappointed. In any case, this was a happy occasion, wasn't it? Everyone had worked hard for a day, but they didn't get a single reward. If it was any other day, Gu Fengzi would have thought about it. But now, how could she care about it? When she entered the house and saw the snowy interior, she was so angry that her vision turned black and she almost fainted. The exquisitely embroidered curtains were gone. The Su-embroidered tablecloths, chairs, and curtains were gone. The flower hairpin painting of the maids hanging on the wall was gone. All kinds of exquisite and beautiful porcelain, jade, gold, and silver ornaments were all gone. The bed was still there, but the curtains had been changed to a plain green one. All the bedding and bedding had been changed to a plain color. The rouge and face powder were also gone without a trace. Preposterous! Preposterous! Gu Fengzi was so angry that she couldn't speak. She suddenly opened the wardrobe. The brightly colored clothes were gone, leaving only a few plain clothes that she rarely wore. A surge of blood rushed to her head, and Gu Fengzi almost fell. "Sangwan, you slut! You dare to touch my things! You took advantage of my absence to do such a despicable and shameless thing. I will teach you a lesson." Gu Fengzi was unable to restrain her anger. She cursed Sangwan and Mama Li repeatedly. When she was tired from cursing, she sat down on the bed and gasped for breath. She only calmed down after a while. The sky was already dark. Lan Xiang saw that she had finally stopped and carefully came in to light the lamp. "Why is it only you? Where are the others? Where the hell did they all go?" Gu Fengzi's brows furrowed and she was angry again. Lan Xiang hurriedly said, "Everyone is here. Xiao Chun, Xiao Xia, old Madame Zhang, and old Madame Xiao Zhang are still working in our courtyard. This servant saw that there was nothing else and let them go. Young miss, the kitchen has already sent the food. Do you want to eat now?" Gu Fengzi sneered. "So you still left people for me? I thought that you would take the opportunity to send everyone in my courtyard away." After thinking for a while, she looked up and asked, where is eldest cousin? Why didn't he come to accompany me? Lan Xiang's expression changed slightly. She lowered her head and said softly, this servant doesn't know. Even if she was beaten to death, she wouldn't dare to say that eldest young master had already come by. However, he left after hearing your cursing. Go invite him. Gu Fengzi couldn't help but become angry again. She stomped her feet and said, quickly go invite him. He can't not come to see me today. He can't not come. Young miss, you should eat first. Lan Xiang didn't dare to go. She braced herself and said with a smile, you must be tired after a day of work. Isn't it? Facing Gu Fengzi's cold glare, Lan Xiang automatically stopped the second half of her sentence and quickly smiled. This servant will go now. Quickly go. Just tell him that I'm waiting for him to eat. Gu Fengzi nodded. Seeing Lan Xiang go to invite Shi Fengju, Gu Fengzi's mood turned around. She let out a long sigh and smiled coldly, muttering, are you looking down on me? Why don't you see if you're qualified? I can't teach you a lesson, but I wonder if eldest cousin can ask you. Young Mistress Shi. Gu Fengzi sat in front of the dressing mirror. She wanted to put on some powder to dress herself up, but to her surprise, she did not have any. She cursed under her breath and could only tidy up her hair. Just as she was about to ask someone to fetch some water to wash her face, she stopped herself from doing so. Instead, she loosened up her hair to make herself look even more pitiful. That's good too. I'll just leave it like that. When eldest cousin sees me, he will help me. Gu Fengzi sneered and secretly thought about how to phrase her words when Shi Fengju arrived. Unexpectedly, Lan Xiang did not manage to invite Shi Fengju over. Young master said that young mistress is tired from the journey and should rest first. He will come to visit young mistress in 2 days. He also said that if young mistress needs anything, you can go to Ning Garden to inform young mistress. Young mistress will take care of it. Lan Xiang twisted her fingers uneasily and her voice became softer and softer. The oppressive aura was already pressing down on her. Gu Fengzi's face was frighteningly pale and her eyes were about to pop out. Her ferocious expression, coupled with her white robes and the snowy house, made her look even more terrifying. What did you say? Gu Fengzi gritted her teeth and asked word by word. Young mistress. Lan Xiang subconsciously took 2 steps back and shrank her shoulders, not daring to make a sound. You go again. The consecutive disagreements had made Gu Fengzi lose her rationality. She angrily pointed at the door and shouted, go invite eldest cousin again. Tell him that if he doesn't come, tell him that I won't eat if he doesn't come. Lan Xiang couldn't help but be moved. She quickly glanced at Gu Fengzi and was speechless. She thought to herself, young mistress, even this servant can see that the situation is not right. Why are you still using the same trick as before? Lan Xiang didn't dare to say it in front of Gu Fengzi. She braced herself and agreed before turning around and leaving. Gu Fengzi smiled complacently. She was planning to settle the score with him when he came. Unexpectedly, Lan Xiang was the only one who came back. Gu Fengzi felt that it was inconceivable. How could it be? He wouldn't be like this in the past. This trick had never failed before. Gu Fengzi widened her eyes in disbelief. Lan Xiang braced herself and whispered, young master said that if young mistress doesn't have an appetite, then you should rest. Young mistress must be exhausted today. You can eat when you have an appetite. He really said that? You really went to see him? You didn't lie to me? Gu Fengzi stared at Lan Xiang. Lan Xiang's heart turned cold. She smiled bitterly. Young mistress, you don't even believe this servant. This servant doesn't dare to lie to young mistress. Young master really said that. Gu Fengzi's heart sank to the bottom of the valley. She shivered. He had a change of heart. He really had a change of heart. She had been worried about this for the past few days. Unexpectedly, her nightmare came true. Gu Fengzi couldn't help but grit her teeth. Fortunately, she entered this door today. Otherwise, she wouldn't know if she would have another chance. She raised her head and looked at everything in the room. It was plain, but all the furniture, utensils, mattresses, and curtains were all of good quality. It was much better than the Gu family's broken courtyard. Based on this, she didn't regret entering this door today. The future is long. Gu Fengzi secretly told herself. Go to the study again. Gu Fengzi sighed deeply. She looked at Lan Xiang, who was about to cry, and said slowly, just say that it was my fault. I shouldn't have vented my frustrations and shouldn't have been willful. I'm going to rest first. Tomorrow, I'll go see eldest cousin and pay my respects to aunt and Jejie. Ask eldest cousin to rest early. Don't stay up too late. It's not good for your body. Go. Lan Xiang was stunned. After a while, she nodded. Yes, this servant will go now. Study. She originally thought that young master was in the study, but young master was in Ning Garden. However, at this time, she didn't dare to add oil to the fire and say this to Gu Fengzi. Gu Fengzi's lips curled up slightly. Her half-closed eyes flashed with a cold flame. Did she think it was over? No, this was just the beginning. After having her meal, Gu Fengzi went to bed. That night, there were no more disturbances. Mama Li, who had been waiting to watch the show, was disappointed for a while. Even though she had accepted the truth, she didn't agree. On the day that Gu Fengzi's sedan chair entered the door, even though Sang Wan's expression was calm as usual and she methodically handled all the affairs, her heart still felt empty and lost. Chapter 72. She originally thought that even if Shi Fengju didn't go to Peony Park to rest a night, he would still accompany Gu Fengzi for dinner and then rest in the study. Unexpectedly, when it was close to dinner, Shi Fengju sent someone to tell Sang Wan to wait for him to eat. Sang Wan widened her eyes in surprise, thinking that she had misheard. Xing Ji, Lu Ye, Hong Yi, and the others were delighted. Mama Li was beaming with joy as she said, Young mistress, old slave will tell the kitchen to prepare. They will prepare a few good dishes for you and young master. Sang Wan didn't know what to say, but she couldn't refuse, so she nodded slightly with a smile. Young mistress, this shows that no one can surpass you in young master's heart. This is great, let the servants take a look. Let's see who still dares to think that they've climbed up that branch. Don't blame old slave for talking too much. Tonight you have to take the initiative. Mama Li couldn't help but go forward and speak in a low voice. I know, Mama. Sang Wan smiled. However, in her heart, she thought, no one can surpass me? If I'm really that important to him, Gu Fengzi wouldn't have entered at this time. Mama Li didn't know that her words to Sang Wan had pointed out most of Shi Fengju's goals. Shi Fengju was thinking that once Gu Fengzi entered the door, the servants below couldn't help but look down on Sang Wan, gossip behind her back, and secretly make trouble for her. Therefore, he wanted to express his attitude. He wanted to let everyone think before they wanted to humiliate young mistress. This was for the peace of the residents and to prevent a rebellion. Shi Fengju used this reason to convince himself. As for whether he truly thought this way, he didn't want to think about it. After the two of them had dinner together, they sat down in the warm room to drink tea. Sang Wan saw that Shi Fengju had no intention of leaving, and couldn't help but feel a little puzzled. When the maidservants weren't around, she finally couldn't help but ask, Eldest young master, don't you need to go see your sister? Younger sister? Shi Fengju was stunned for a moment, and then he realized who she was talking about. His brows furrowed subconsciously. I went to see her before dinner. She must be tired today, so I won't go over. Oh. Sang Wan replied faintly. So that's how it was. You're really considerate and caring. Shi Fengju couldn't help but feel a little depressed. He clearly didn't want to say this, but he didn't know why the words came out of his mouth. Shi Fengju noticed that although Sang Wan's expression remained the same, her tone had become slightly colder. Subconsciously, he wanted to explain himself, but he didn't know where to start. Why are you calling her younger sister? Shi Fengju asked. What? Sang Wan was stunned. She said with a hint of mockery, Mother ordered me to do this before you came back. Now that you're back, isn't it true? Shi Fengju was speechless for a moment. When he met Sang Wan's meaningful gaze, he felt even more guilty. He understood what she meant. She couldn't disobey her mother's orders, but at that time, she still had a glimmer of hope in her heart, and that was him. She thought that he would abide by their agreement. She thought that when he came back, he would change everything. Indeed, he had rushed back in a hurry on the way back. He really did think so. He wanted to come back and stop this from happening. A merchant's honor was the most important thing. No matter who it was, he was used to keeping his promises. However, no one would have thought that his cousin's father would pass away. In the face of her tearful cries and complaints, he couldn't refuse at all. Thus, things became like this. Shi Fengju's lips moved. He really wanted to say sorry, but he had already said this several times. Sang Wan didn't buy it. Even if he said it again, it would be useless. He pretended to be stupid. He coughed and said with a smile, "How about the travel book I brought back? Do you like it?" "Oh, you want to change the topic?" "I don't care about your cousin." It's very good. Thank you for your consideration." Sang Wan nodded. "It's good that you like it." Shi Fengju's eyes lit up. "It's the most popular travel book in the capital now. Once it was released, it was sold out. I had to ask someone to help me get this set. It must be very expensive, right? Thank you for spending so much money." Sang Wan raised her head and said with a smile. Shi Fengju saw that she was so polite and distant to him. He was slightly disappointed, but his mood quickly recovered. He said, "It's what I should do. You don't need to mind. I brought back a lot of things this time. I'm not free these days, so they're all in the study room. Tomorrow, I'll have someone move them over. You can organize them and distribute them to each courtyard." "Okay." Sang Wan nodded. Shi Fengju saw that she was still distant to him. No matter how much enthusiasm he had, it was shattered by her. The conversation continued for a few more sentences. Shi Fengju finally left in defeat. He stood up and said, "You should rest early. I'll go to the study room tonight. I'll be back tomorrow night." After thinking for a bit, he added, "Fengzi is my mother's niece. Even if I don't care about her, I still have to care about my mother's face." Sang Wan was slightly startled. Was he explaining to her? Did she hear wrong? Wasn't Gu Fengzi the person he cared about the most? How could it be? When she came back to her senses, Shi Fengju's figure had already disappeared. Sang Wan lowered her head and carefully digested his words. The corners of her lips unconsciously rose, and a strange feeling slowly flowed in her heart. She couldn't tell what kind of feeling it was. It was slightly sour, with a hint of sweetness, and a bit of melancholy. She didn't want to think about whether he had said those words on impulse or after careful consideration. She couldn't guess, and she couldn't prove anything. After leaving Ning Garden, Shi Fengju looked back at the brightly lit room. He bitterly smiled and silently sighed. He turned back and softly called out, "Wanyang, Wanyang." Then he slowly walked towards the study room with his hands behind his back. Cousin. Gu Fengzi. He had finally seen her true colors. He originally thought that marrying her into the family was the thing he looked forward to the most in his life. And the day she married into the family would be the happiest day of his life. But today, he stood behind the lush flowers and trees, watching the small sedan chair enter the manor. His heart was calm without a single ripple, as if this matter had nothing to do with him. He even faintly wondered if he had made a mistake by marrying her into the family. When he appeared in Peony Park, he was right behind her. He quietly watched as she fiercely cursed and cursed without end. At that moment, there was only one word in his heart: preposterous. He never thought that she would have such a face. In a place where he couldn't see, she was clearly a shrew comparable to a scoundrel in the marketplace. Shi Fengju couldn't help but shiver. This was the woman he had liked for so many years. How could he like this kind of woman? Thinking back to their interactions in the past, he even began to wonder what kind of feelings he had for her. Shi Fengju was also a bit at a loss. He only felt that his heart was empty. Some things weren't like what he imagined. He wanted to see clearly, but it was like looking at flowers in a fog, always separated by a layer. He didn't have Lan Xiang report, but chose to silently turn around and leave. The moment he turned around, the filthy words behind him gradually disappeared. Another figure subconsciously appeared in his mind. For a moment, all kinds of impressions and memories came to him. Some were smiling like a flower, some were shy and timid, some were angry with a thin face, some were gentle and reserved, some were elegant and dignified, and some were sad and sorrowful, helpless and in pain. All of these figures were her, Sang Myung. At this moment, he was shocked to realize that unknowingly, she had filled every corner of his heart. Whenever he thought of her, his heart would unconsciously soften. He couldn't help but start to pay attention to her. Only then did he realize that every move, every frown, every smile, and every look in her eyes attracted him so much. In just a short meal and a short chat, Shi Fengju was even more certain of a fact. She had already entered his heart without him noticing. If you want something, fight for it and pursue it. This was the spirit of the Shi family. It was also the truth that Shi Fengju had always believed in since he was a businessman. Of course, it wasn't just for business. It could be used in other places as well. He was never a person who was willing to force himself. Just like how he couldn't persuade his mother no matter how hard he tried. Even if he married Sang Wan, he could still treat her coldly and give his beloved cousin everything. And that was his plan from the beginning. Now that he realized that the person he liked for so many years wasn't what he imagined, he would no longer deceive himself and others. Shi Fengju suddenly regretted that he found out too late. Not too late, not too late, just today. If he could see it clearly before today, he would never have welcomed Gu Fengzi into his family and would have married someone else. Unfortunately, it was too late by a day. Fortunately, there was still a buffer of 3 years. 3 years was enough to change many things. If he couldn't settle this matter in 3 years, then even he would look down on himself. That night was destined to be a sleepless night for Shi Fengju, Sang Wan, and Gu Fengzi. Shi Fengju tossed and turned in bed. His mind was filled with thoughts of Sang Wan. He thought for a moment, laughed for a moment, frowned for a moment, and sighed softly for a moment. He had never felt such a rush of excitement before. Sang Wan was the most conflicted. And the most painful thing for her was that she didn't know whether she should be conflicted or not. What about Gu Fengzi? He calmly and clearly drafted a draft in his mind. He was smug and full of fighting spirit as he thought about what he should do the next day and what he should do in the future. If she wanted something, she had to fight for it. That was what she thought too. The difference was that Shi Fengju added, as long as you put your heart into it. And she added, by hook or by crook. The next morning, Gu Fengzi woke up. She picked out a pea-green jacket and a white silk dress from the wardrobe and ordered Lan Xiang to comb her hair. Looking at the girl in the mirror who still wore her hair in a bun, Gu Fengzi felt a wave of regret. She couldn't help but feel a deep hatred. If it wasn't for that damned old man who didn't die earlier or later, she would have been so happy with her cousin in front of the mirror, putting on makeup and drawing eyebrows. Last night, she would have been so happy. That damned old man. When he was alive, he was a burden. She didn't expect that he wouldn't give her a peaceful life even after he died. Gu Fengzi couldn't help but curse. Chapter 73. Young miss, do you think this will do? Lan Xiang inserted a lotus flower hairpin into her hair and asked carefully. Gu Fengzi looked up. Other than the silver hairpin, there was only a silver flower hairpin. Even though the craftsmanship was good, silver was silver. No matter how you looked at it, it looked shabby. All right, let's do it like this. Gu Fengzi snorted coldly. She thought to herself that she had to ask her cousin to get her some white jade and green jade jewelry. In the past, she only liked bright and beautiful jewelry such as gold thread, green jade, and cat's eye jewelry with rubies and sapphires. She thought that the quality of jade was too cold and plain. Who would have thought that she could not wear any of those? Not only could she not wear them, but they had all been taken away by that slut Sang Wan. Gu Fengzi could not help feeling a pang of heartache. She secretly thought that she had to spit them all out. After washing up, the servant girl brought in breakfast. It was a bowl of 8 treasures lotus seed lily porridge, a bowl of red rice porridge, a plate of crispy sesame seed cakes, a plate of steamed dumplings, and 2 or 3 side dishes to go along with the porridge. Just these. Gu Fengzi's face immediately darkened. Lan Xiang understood her meaning and quickly replied in a small voice, "Young miss, you are currently in the mourning period, so these are all vegetarian." Mourning period. It was the mourning period again. Gu Fengzi, who was incomparably miserable because of these 2 words, suppressed the anger in her heart. She did not say anything else and sat down to eat the vegetarian breakfast. "Let's go and pay our respects to Aunt." After eating breakfast and rinsing her mouth, Gu Fengzi stood up and said. Lan Xiang wanted to remind her to first place Old Master Gu's memorial tablet and light a stick of incense, but she opened her mouth and closed it again. Walking on the road that she was familiar with in the past, the scenery that entered her eyes was the same as before. But Gu Fengzi's heart began to feel uncomfortable. In any case, her marrying into the family was a happy occasion, wasn't it? It was fine if it was inconvenient to wear red decorations, but there was no symbolic celebration either. Even the lanterns hanging in the corridor and the potted flowers under the steps did not show any signs of being carefully rearranged. Was she really not worth mentioning? Sang Wan. Gu Fengzi secretly gritted her teeth. She hated Sang Wan even more, but she automatically ignored Mama Li. At this time, Wang had just woken up as usual. She had not even changed her clothes. She had casually put on a wide purple robe embroidered with large peony flowers and was combing her hair. "I heard that Miss Biao is here to pay respects to First Madam." Wang was startled. She smiled and said, "Why is it so early? Seriously, why is this child suddenly treating me like an outsider? Quick, invite her in and sit down." The young maidservant complied, but before she could leave, Gu Fengzi had already lifted the curtain and stepped in. She smiled and called out, "Aunt, Feng is here to pay her respects to you." "Hee, good, good." Wang turned her head and glanced at her. She was dressed in plain clothes, and the hairpin in her hair was also very plain. She looked more elegant than usual, which made people feel sorry for her. Thinking of her parents' death and her loneliness, Wang's heart softened. She smiled tenderly and said, "Did you rest well yesterday? Why are you up so early? Go sit outside. Aunt will be done in a while." Everything was fine yesterday. Thank you for your concern. Aunt is still the best to me." Gu Fengzi nodded. She smiled and took the ivory comb from Mama Zhang's hands. She smiled and said, "I haven't combed Aunt's hair in a long time. Let me do it." Thinking that she was still in mourning, Wang's body stiffened. However, she could not bear to refuse her good intentions. She smiled and let her do as she pleased. Gu Fengzi first used a wide-toothed comb to slowly and carefully comb Wang Shi's hair before combing it with a small sandalwood comb. Putting down the wooden comb, Gu Fengzi's nimble fingers weaved through Wang Shi's glossy black hair like a swallow. Very quickly, she tied up a beautiful peony hairpin before attentively inserting a golden hairpin inlaid with red and blue, as well as an emerald flower ornament. "Aunt's hair is still so good. It's black, shiny, smooth, and soft like satin," Gu Fengzi praised with a smile. Wang looked at herself in the mirror and was very satisfied with Gu Fengzi's skills. She held her hand and smiled. "Haha, Aunt's hair is starting to turn white. It's not as good as you say. On the other hand, your craftsmanship is much better than before. You combed it quickly and well. It's to my liking." Gu Fengzi helped Wang up and said with a smile, "If Aunt likes it, I'll comb Aunt's hair every day, okay?" Wang gently patted her hand and said with a smile, "You still have to mourn. How can you be so tired from running around every day?" She sighed. "Good child, you've suffered." All the grievances she had suffered the day before welled up in her heart. Gu Fengzi's eyes felt warm and unknowingly turned red. She intimately held onto Wang's arm and gently snuggled up to her. She whispered like a spoiled child, With Aunt taking care of me, I don't suffer at all. Really? As long as Aunt is here, Fong-er will be at ease and happy. Wong felt both pity and love for her. Thinking about how she was raised by her when she was so young, and how she was no different from her own daughter, her pity deepened. She reached out and gently hugged her and said with a smile, "Silly girl, don't talk nonsense. Don't worry, we're a real family from now on. Aunt won't let you suffer." And Gu Fongzi smiled and said coquettishly, "I know that Aunt Wong loves me the most and treats me the best." The two looked at each other and smiled. "Oh sister, you're here." Gu Fongzi's eyes glanced and saw Sang-won standing at the door, not knowing whether to enter or leave. She cried out in surprise and hurriedly let go of Wong's arm. She collected herself and took 2 steps back, standing obediently at the side. Sang-won could only smile and say, "N," as she stepped in. Seeing that Wong had already sat down, she went forward to greet her. She reminded herself not to think about what she just saw. "Don't think about it. N, let's sit down and talk." Wong smiled and nodded. "Fongzi, you sit down too." Wong smiled and said to Gu Fongzi, who was standing behind her. Gu Fongzi did not move, but looked at Sang-won inquisitively. Sang-won caught a glimpse from the corner of her eyes and couldn't help but be angry. What was she trying to do in front of mother-in-law? Sang-won pretended not to see and lowered her head to sip her tea, admiring the blue and white porcelain teacup in her hand. "Fongzi, what's wrong?" As expected, Wong was unhappy. Following Gu Fongzi's gaze, she looked at Sang-won. Seeing that Sang-won did not notice Gu Fongzi's expression, she relaxed and smiled. "Hurry and sit down." "Yes, Aunt." Gu Fongzi smiled and sat down. Sang-won secretly sneered. If she had met Gu Fongzi's gaze just now, or even worse, if she had said, "Mother told you to sit, then sit," then it would have been obvious that she was bullying her. How could mother-in-law not be angry? Mother-in-law would even think that if she was like this in front of her, what would happen behind her back? Sang-won believed that even if her mother-in-law did not think this way, Gu Fongzi would have a way to make her think this way. After chatting for a while, Wong smiled and let Sang-won go. Sang-won did not want to stay any longer to see the mother-in-law and daughter-in-law relationship, so she got up and left with a smile. Gu Fongzi hurriedly took 2 steps forward and wanted to hold Sang-won's arm. "Sister, let me see you out." Sang-won coldly said, "You are not the owner here. What right do you have to say the word 'see you out'?" "No need." Sang-won calmly raised her hand to signal Luya to help her up. She smiled at Gu Fongzi and said, "Mother hasn't seen you for a long time. I think she has a lot to say to you. Why don't you stay and chat with Mother?" "That's right, Fongzi, let Won Nyong go. You stay and chat with me." Wong also smiled. "Okay, Aunt, as long as you like, Fong-er can accompany you every day." With her back facing Wong, Gu Fongzi coldly raised her eyebrows at Sang-won. Wong could not see Gu Fongzi's expression, but she could see Sang-won's. Sang-won's expression did not change, and her eyes were still calm. She smiled and said softly, "That's right, incense, candles, paper money, and all kinds of offerings have been prepared. In a moment, I will have someone send them to Peony Park. In the future, if younger sister needs anything, you can directly tell Mama Lee. She is experienced in handling matters, so she will not delay younger sister's matters. In other words, you're still in mourning. Don't forget about your biological father by sucking up to your auntie." Sang-won quickly glanced over and saw Wong's gaze converge. "Okay, many thanks for older sister's concern. Later, I will personally go to Ning Garden to thank older sister." Gu Fongzi paused and glared fiercely at Sang-won. "Younger sister, there's no need to be so polite." Sang-won smiled generously and bowed slightly to Wong. "Mother, Won Nyong will take her leave first." "Okay, go." Wong nodded. "Fongzi as Gu Fongzi expected, Wong smiled at her and said, "Aunt doesn't need you to serve me here. Quickly return to Peony Park. After all, he is your biological father. The dead should be respected, so let bygones be bygones." Don't mention it again, ah. Gu Fengzi hated Sang Wan to the core, but she obediently nodded to Wang. Feng will return now. Aunt Wang, you've always been benevolent to think this way. Fengzi has learned. Listen to Aunt Wang's words. I knew Fengzi is the most sensible. Wang smiled happily. Gu Fengzi smiled and bid her farewell. Oh right, Aunt Wang, Feng wants to visit Big Cousin. Feng hasn't seen Big Cousin for a long time. I wonder if he's doing well. Wang raised her eyebrows in surprise and asked, Why didn't you see him yesterday? He didn't go to Peony Park to visit you? No, Gu Fengzi shook her head, but there was no dissatisfaction on her face. Instead, she smiled understandingly and said, Big Cousin must be too busy. After all, our Shi family's huge business depends on him. Moreover, Fengzi was quite tired after a long day of traveling, so Big Cousin must be sympathizing with Feng. Outrageous, Wang said in her heart. Even if she couldn't consummate her marriage during the 100-day mourning period, as her husband, shouldn't he at least visit her? What's with him not asking about her? Of course, Wang was dissatisfied, but her son was still closer to her than her niece. She wouldn't say anything bad about Shi Fengju in front of Gu Fengzi. Chapter 74. Seeing that Gu Fengzi was not bothered by the matter, Wang felt even more apologetic and smiled. You should return to Peony Park first. I think your big cousin is busy and has no time. When he's free, he'll go and visit you. With her words, Gu Fengzi felt relieved and could not help but feel proud. She smiled and agreed before turning to leave. Nanny Jiang, send someone to see what Fengju is doing. If there's nothing, call him over. Wang immediately instructed the moment Gu Fengzi left. Gu Fengzi left the main courtyard triumphantly and slowly returned to Peony Park. On the way back, she saw 11 or 12 servants carrying several large wooden boxes that were half the height of a person towards Ning Garden. She turned her head and looked towards the direction of Shi Fengju's study room. Gu Fengzi stopped in her tracks. Go and ask what's going on. Lan Xiang agreed and quickly went forward to ask. After a while, she reported back to Gu Fengzi, These are the gifts that young master brought back from the ship. He's asking someone to carry them to young mistress. Gu Fengzi's heart immediately felt stifled and her eyes flashed before she said faintly, Let's go, we'll also go to Ning Garden to pay our respects to young mistress. Big cousin, he really had a change of heart. In the past, every time he came back, the best and first things were given to her. But this time, he did not even mention a word and instead carried the gifts to Ning Garden with great fanfare. What kind of vixen did that Sang Wan use to steal Big Cousin's soul? Missy, let's go back. Lan Xiang was startled and her scalp went numb. Missy was at it again. Anyone with a discerning eye could see that young master was thinking highly of young mistress, so why did Missy have to ask for a snub? Why? Are you afraid? Gu Fengzi snorted coldly. No. Lan Xiang shrunk her neck. Newbie just feels that. It's not too good. Shut up. You have no right to speak. Gu Fengzi sneered. Not too good? I don't think so. Even if she doesn't recognize me as her younger sister, I still have to call her elder sister. Calling her big sister was letting her off too easily. When Gu Fengzi arrived, the maidservants had already handed over all the wooden chests and put them down. They received their rewards one by one, kowtowed to express their gratitude, and left with smiles on their faces. The 5 or 6 large wooden chests were particularly conspicuous in the side hall. Elder sister. Gu Fengzi didn't wait for someone to announce her arrival. She flung her handkerchief and walked in with a smile. Younger sister is here to greet elder sister. Sister, you're here? Have a seat. Sang Wan smiled and ordered the servants to serve tea. Gu Fengzi laughed and said, I haven't even offered elder sister tea, but I've already drunk elder sister's good tea. Little sister really feels bad about it. Lu Ye, Hong Ye, and the others couldn't help but frown. Mama Li smiled and said, the old slave said that Miss Biao always does things cleanly. Sometimes, he was a little too quick. It's still early now, so Miss Biao doesn't need to come greet young mistress now. It won't be too late to come 3 years later. The old slave thinks that it's better for Miss Biao to stay in Peony Park and observe mourning. That way, old Master Gu won't be happy in heaven and blame Miss Biao for not observing mourning for him. Gu Fengzi's expression immediately turned cold. She smiled at Sangwon and said, I thought that elder sister was in charge of Ning Garden now, but it turns out that it's not. Mama Lee, you're really a worrier. Aren't you afraid that outsiders will say that you don't want to give up your power? You really don't treat yourself as an outsider. Fortunately, Mama doesn't have a daughter. Otherwise, if a daughter inherits her mother's business, Ning Garden will never be in elder sister's hands. Oh, look at my memory, I said the wrong thing again. How come Mama doesn't have a daughter? Even if you don't have a daughter, you still have a daughter. She chuckled as she said this. Mama Lee was furious. What do you mean? Gu Fengzi sneered. It seems that what I said was right. Ning Garden is indeed Mama's world. Mama can do whatever she wants. Who dares to say anything against her? Which family's servant dares to interrupt when their mistress is speaking? And which family's servant dares to say, you, me, to their mistress? Oh, I said the wrong thing again. Mama, you've worked hard and have contributed greatly to the household. Even in front of old mistress, you still have some face. How can you say that you're a servant? Gu Fengzi did not care about Mama Lee's pale face and trembling lips. She continued to speak pitifully. Mama, Fengzi is still young and doesn't know how to speak. Fengzi doesn't know how to please you. Please don't blame Fengzi. If you complain to old mistress, Fengzi won't be able to bear the consequences. Fengzi will apologize to you. After that, she stood up and bowed slightly towards Mama Lee. Mama Lee was so angry that her hands and feet were trembling and she could not speak. In her heart, there was only one sentence. I can't stay in this place anymore, I can't stay in this place anymore. Everyone was silent as they looked at each other. There was a strange atmosphere in the air. Old slave, old slave. Mama Lee's face was frighteningly pale. There was an indescribable hurt, embarrassment, and pain on her face. She did not expect that there would be people who would think of her and say such things about her. Could it be that she was really wrong? She only treated young master as her mistress and her mistress. She wanted him well and his family well, that was all. Her child, her husband, and her family were all gone. All her efforts were placed on young master. He was her spiritual sustenance and support. She gave her all, but in the eyes of others, she became arrogant and despotic. She became someone who did not distinguish between status and inferiority. Younger sister, what are you saying? Sangwon stood up and held tightly onto Nanny Lee's hand. With a sullen face, she raised her eyebrows and said coldly, It's my fortune to have Nanny's guidance. If not for Nanny, Ning Garden would have long been in a foul state. Nanny is a mistress in Ning Garden, not a servant. If younger sister has any objections, you can go and reason with old mistress and young master. To say such things in front of me, I wonder if you're teaching Nanny or teaching me. Young mistress. Mama Lee's eyes turned red and she choked with sobs. Gu Fengzi suddenly stood up. Her lips curled into a mocking smile as she met Sangwon's gaze without fear. You're treating her like a bodhisattva, aren't you just trying to kill someone with a borrowed knife? In your heart, she's just a barely useful knife that hasn't gone senile. When this knife becomes rusty and useless one day, I'm afraid the person who wants her to leave the most is you. Gu Fengzi's words shocked everyone. Everyone was stunned and some people couldn't help thinking, could it be that it's true? Thinking about it carefully, Mama Lee had indeed done many things for young mistress after she returned. There were many things that were inconvenient for young mistress to do and many things that were inconvenient for her to say. All of them were done by Mama Lee. Mama Lee's expression also changed slightly and her heart was in a mess. Younger sister, even if you want to sow discord, you shouldn't say such harsh words. Younger sister, what you want to think is your own business and no one can change it. Younger sister, don't judge others with your own heart and think that everyone is the same as me. Nanny has lived in the Sher family for decades and has eaten more salt than we have rice. She probably doesn't need others to tell her how to do things, right? She only does what she wants to do and what she thinks should be done. Why does it sound so different in younger sister's mouth? Younger sister, you think too highly of older sister and underestimate Nanny. There is only one reason why I respect Nanny, and that is because Nanny is my husband's wet nurse. In Ning Garden, there will always be a place for Nanny. Young mistress. Mama Lee was so moved that she was in a complete mess. She was even more ashamed of herself for being unconsciously provoked by Gu Fengzi. She couldn't help but want to kneel down in front of Sang-Wan, with young mistress's words, "Old slave will have no regrets even if her bones are crushed for young mistress." Nanny, quickly get up. Sang-Wan hurriedly helped Nanny Lee up and said softly, "Nanny, don't take the gossip to heart. Think more about young master and Wan Nyang." Yes, young mistress is right. Mama Lee's spirits were lifted and she nodded repeatedly. Her complexion also improved a lot. That's right, as long as the young master that she had painstakingly raised didn't have any objections, what else could other people say? Wasn't it just irrelevant? Why should she care? Gu Fengzi was angered by Sang-Wan's my husband, and she sneered, "Sang-Wan, good move, good move. I really underestimated you. You really have a way to win people's hearts." Humph. There is a saying that good advice is unpleasant to the ears. Some people are not willing to listen, and they will only know if I, Gu Fengzi, am right when they suffer losses in the future. Each and every one of you, Gu Fengzi pointed at Luya and the rest and shouted coldly, "Open your eyes wide and look carefully. See if my words are right or wrong." She then sneered at Sang-Wan, "What do you mean by my husband? You don't deserve to be called that. Who in the entire estate doesn't know that eldest cousin was forced to marry you? Otherwise, he wouldn't have delayed the wedding time and time again. You really think you are the Sher family's young mistress? Are you worthy?" Fengzi. Shi Fengju suddenly strode in from the outside. His cold face was full of anger, and his sharp eyes stared coldly at Gu Fengzi's face. Gu Fengzi was taken aback and her face turned sallow. After a while, she mumbled, Big cousin, since things have come to this, there is no need for big cousin to hide it from big sister. Why don't you just tell her everything? It will be good for both of us. Big cousin, you don't have to endure so much." After a moment of blankness, Gu Fengzi's mind turned and she immediately changed her tone. "That's enough." Shi Fengju was furious. His matters were not for others to decide. "You get out. Big cousin. Get out." Shi Fengju's face was frosty. Gu Fengzi's tears rolled down her cheeks. She turned around and ran out crying. Lan Xiang called out, "Young mistress," and quickly followed. Sang-Wan felt very embarrassed. She stood there in a daze, and her mind was buzzing. Gu Fengzi was right. This was a fact that everyone in the household knew, and no one dared to say in front of her. Now that this layer of window paper was suddenly exposed in front of everyone, no one could understand her feelings at this moment. Even when she saw Shi Fengju shouting at Gu Fengzi to run away, the embarrassment in her heart did not subside at all. Chapter 75. Shi Fengju looked at the pale and trembling Sang-Wan who was trying her best to endure the pain. Thinking of what Gu Fengzi had just said, his heart ached and he had the urge to pull her into his embrace to comfort her. However, he could clearly see the hurt and coldness in her eyes, and that made him stop in his tracks. He knew that she knew that what Gu Fengzi had said was true. Although he wanted to tell her that was in the past, it was not like this now. Because he had found someone who was truly worthy of his love and care, and that person was her. He also knew that she would not believe it, because even he himself did not believe it. Eldest young master. Mama Lee looked at Sang-Wan's face and couldn't bear it. In the silence, she finally couldn't help but speak up. "Nanny, I know." Shi Fengju gently interrupted her words and nodded at her to reassure her. "Nanny, you all can leave first. I have something to say to Wan Nyang. All right, then the old slave will leave first. Mama Lee nodded and looked at Sang Wan worriedly. The maidservants bowed their heads and clenched their fists as they silently walked out. Only Luya remembered that Sang Wan had told her that she and Shi Fengju were fake husband and wife. She bit her lip and suppressed the anger in her heart. Then she asked Mama Lee to drag her out. Shi Fengju didn't know what to say, but Sang Wan's soft voice sounded from the side. Actually, everyone knows about this, so it's not a big deal to say it out loud. However, if someone deliberately makes things difficult for you in the future, eldest young master, don't forget to say a few words for Wan Nyang. Wan Nyang doesn't want to be bullied by others. Shi Fengju unconsciously looked up in surprise. The woman in front of him looked as calm and gentle as ever. The paleness and injury just now seemed to be an illusion. Shi Fengju, on the other hand, felt even more heartache. That won't happen, Shi Fengju said gently. Sang Wan, you're the young mistress of the household. Only you have the right to teach others a lesson. If anyone is rude to you, just deal with them according to the rules. I'm here. I'm relieved to hear that, Sang Wan said, nodding gently. Shi Fengju was happy. Wan Nyang, you are not angry anymore? Sang Wan was stunned and said with a smile, what is there to be angry about? You're thinking too much. I don't want your mother to teach me a lesson again, Sang said. That's good, that's good. Shi Fengju was happy and said, don't worry, let's pretend that it didn't happen. Let me handle it. Okay. Sang Wan smiled. Shi Fengju suddenly didn't know what to say. His original apprehension suddenly disappeared. He should be happy that she wasn't angry, but when he saw that she didn't care at all, he felt depressed. I'll go out first, you. Shi Fengju looked at her, wanting to say something, but hesitated. Go do your work, Sang Wan said with a smile. Come back quickly for dinner. I'll wait for you. If she guessed correctly, Gu Fengzi would find Shi Fengju later and try to make him stay in Peony Park. She couldn't let this happen. After what Gu Fengzi said, this kind of thing couldn't happen. Okay, I'll be back soon. Shi Fengju was happy and smiled. Mama, what happened just now? Mama knows how to deal with it, right? Shi Fengju stopped outside the door. Even if Shi Fengju didn't say this, Mama Lee would take care of it for Sang Wan's sake. But since Shi Fengju asked, he was supporting Sang Wan. Mama Lee was very happy and immediately said, eldest young master, don't worry. The old slave understands. If anyone dares to leak even half a word of what Miss Gu said, and the old slave finds out, he will immediately tie them up and sell them. Those who know but don't report will be severely punished. Everyone's hearts trembled and they lowered their heads even more. Good. Then I'll leave it to Mama. Shi Fengju's cold eyes swept over them and nodded at Mama Lee with a smile. Yes, eldest young master. Mama Lee straightened her back and replied loudly. Shi Fengju walked out steadily and subconsciously clenched his fists. Fengzi Fengzi, I really don't know if you understand me too well or not. You actually thought of using my mother to pressure me. If I, Shi Fengju, can't even pacify my own mother, then there's no need for me to continue doing business. Thinking of the interrogation he had just received in front of his mother, he played it down and explained that he had gone to Peony Park yesterday. However, seeing that his cousin was too tired and resting, he didn't want to disturb her and left. The servant girls and aunties of Peony Park had all seen him. His mother would naturally believe him. Moreover, what he said was the truth. However, he still felt extremely uncomfortable. Therefore, after leaving his mother, he went to Peony Park. He wanted to see what his cousin had in store for him. But he didn't expect to find out that she went to Ning Garden. When he arrived at Ning Garden, it was precisely when she scolded Wan Nyang. At that instant, the last bit of image he had of this woman in his heart collapsed, shattered, and was completely and utterly destroyed. Shi Fengju couldn't believe that Gu Fengzi would be so arrogant and despotic in a place where both mother and son couldn't see. Recalling how Sang Wan had been treading on thin ice when she first entered the household, Shi Fengju finally understood. When Shi Fengju stepped into Peony Park, Gu Fengzi was crying in her room. Lan Xiang was comforting her softly. "Eldest young master, you're here." Lan Xiang raised her head and saw Shi Fengju. She cried out in surprise and joy. She hurriedly said to Gu Fengzi, "Missy, eldest young master is here. Eldest young master is here to see you." Gu Fengzi's uneasy heart relaxed and she immediately wanted a yard after getting an inch. She turned her back to Shi Fengju and coldly snorted as she sobbed, "What are you doing here again? Why aren't you accompanying your Wan Nyang to my Peony Park?" In the past, whenever she cried or acted spoiled, Shi Fengju couldn't do anything about it. He could only continuously apologize until her tears turned into laughter. But now that he was coldly watching from the sidelines, Shi Fengju's heart didn't have any ripples. Seeing her act pretentious, he felt a sense of disgust. "I have a few words to say to you. If you don't want to hear it now, then forget it. It won't be too late to say it when you want to hear it." Shi Fengju stood 2 to 3 meters away from her and didn't move forward. His tone was unprecedentedly cold and straightforward. Gu Fengzi's shoulders, which were trembling from her sobs, stiffened. Her first thought was, "Sangwon, it must be Sangwon who complained." Gu Fengzi couldn't help but feel a bit of regret. She regretted running out of Ning Garden and giving Sangwon an opportunity to take advantage of her. "Since you have nothing to say to me and you don't want to see me, why are you still here? Go away, go away." Gu Fengzi still turned around and sobbed. "Young miss. Young miss." Lan Xiang anxiously cried out as she gently pulled on Gu Fengzi's sleeve. Gu Fengzi didn't see Shi Fengju's expression, but Lan Xiang clearly saw it. Shi Fengju couldn't help but hold his forehead. What kind of situation was this? She was still putting on airs. He suddenly felt that they weren't from the same world. If he wanted to communicate, it would be too difficult. "I'll leave now. Wait until you've thought it through." Shi Fengju no longer hesitated. He turned around and left in a huff. Gu Fengzi was completely stunned. She turned her head to look at Shi Fengju's back in disbelief. Her lips moved, and her heart became more anxious and angry. She loudly said, "Fine, go away, go away. Don't ever enter Peony Park again." Shi Fengju turned a deaf ear to her and lightly shook his head in self-mockery. The room suddenly quieted down, and Gu Fengzi's sobs came to an abrupt end. "Young miss," Lan Xiang softly called out. She wanted to persuade her, but didn't dare. Gu Fengzi's heart flashed with a sense of unease for no reason, but she didn't want anyone to see it. Her face immediately darkened, and she coldly said, "What are you still standing there for? Quickly get some water, I want to wash my face." "Yes, young miss." Lan Xiang hurriedly lowered her head and left. Gu Fengzi washed her face and hands as if nothing had happened, then sat down and drank tea as if nothing had happened. Her eyes occasionally glanced at the door. For a long time, the door to Peony Park didn't open. Shi Fengju's figure also didn't appear. Gu Fengzi gradually became uneasy. She thought to herself, "How could this be? If it was any other day, Big Cousin would have come back a long time ago and even brought a small gift to make me happy. Why hasn't he come back yet today?" Gu Fengzi quickly gave herself an answer. He must have been held back by something. She was already like this, yet he still had the mind to deal with other matters. He had indeed been bewitched by that vixen Sangwon. "Lan Xiang, go see if the eldest young master is in the study. If he's not, ask where he went. If he's here, invite him over. Just say that you invited him over for lunch." Gu Fengzi instructed Lan Xiang. She didn't forget to add, "Don't say that I told you to invite him over. Just say that it was your idea. You know what to say, right?" Lan Xiang had done this kind of thing many times in the past. Every time the two of them were at odds, she had to play the role of a matchmaker. "Young miss." Lan Xiang was also somewhat speechless. She thought to herself, "Young miss, you've just married into the family and you're still in mourning. Why do you have to make such a fuss? When the eldest young master came, you chased him away. When he didn't come, you invited him over. You even asked this servant to do it. This servant really feels ashamed. Why aren't you going? Gu Fengzi's long, shapely eyebrows furrowed. Yes, young miss. Lan Xiang didn't dare to disobey. She could only brace herself and go out. She thought to herself that she should soften her words and apologize on behalf of her young miss. She should make her young miss sound more pitiful to move the eldest young master. She had a premonition that if she couldn't invite Shi Fengju, she would definitely end up in a miserable state. Fortunately, Shi Fengju had left the food to go to the business. Lan Xiang secretly let out a sigh of relief and quickly reported back to Gu Fengzi. Since that's the case, keep an eye on the study this afternoon. When eldest cousin comes back, invite him over to my place. You know what to say. Gu Fengzi subconsciously let out a sigh of relief. Yes. As a servant, Lan Xiang could only agree. Gu Fengzi finally got up and went to arrange her father's memorial tablet. She lit 3 incense sticks. Amidst the smoke, she raised her head to look at her father's memorial tablet and sighed softly. How could such a man be her father? Chapter 76. Shi Fengju had just returned to the study and had yet to put away the account books when Lan Xiang appeared. Eldest young master, our young miss has been thinking about you all afternoon. Young miss is in a bad mood. She didn't mean to anger you. Young miss is really pitiful. Eldest young master, please go and see her. If it was in the past, Shi Fengju's heart would have softened when he heard Lan Xiang say these words and thought about Gu Fengzi's pitiful background. But today, he only felt annoyed. He had traveled extensively and seen many pitiful people. In comparison, Gu Fengzi was much luckier. Even the young miss of a wealthy family couldn't compare to her. How pitiful could she be? Is that so? Shi Fengju said indifferently. Then you should accompany her. I don't have time right now. Lan Xiang saw that Shi Fengju didn't immediately refuse and her heart was shaken. She quickly smiled and said, Yes, this servant will go back and accompany young miss and persuade her. Then, can eldest young master go over and have dinner with young miss later? Young miss has been regretting treating eldest young master like that today. She has been saying that she wants to apologize to eldest young master. There's no need to apologize. Shi Fengju smiled faintly. Just tell her to be careful with her words and actions in the future. I don't have time today. I'll go see her when I'm free. All right, you can leave now. Lan Xiang didn't dare to say anything else and left with a yes. When Gu Fengzi heard Lan Xiang's reply, her spirits were dampened, not free. I don't know when eldest cousin became so busy. Go and keep an eye on him. See if he went to Ning Garden. Lan Xiang looked at Gu Fengzi with an aggrieved and pleading expression. She was met with an insistent glare, so she could only hang her head and leave. As Gu Fengzi expected, Shi Fengju really did go to Ning Garden. I knew it. I knew it. Gu Fengzi was so angry that her lips trembled as she paced back and forth in the room. Lan Xiang was speechless as she watched from the side. She thought that Ning Garden was where eldest young master and eldest young mistress lived. Wasn't it normal for eldest young master to return to Ning Garden? It could be seen that Miss was really muddle-headed. She was even angry about this. Lan Xiang sighed inwardly. If he gets angry over this, who knows how angry he will be in the future. After marrying into this household and becoming a concubine, how could she be the same as the previous Miss Biao? Why can't Miss see reality clearly? Go and keep an eye on them. Gu Fengzi suddenly stopped. Lan Xiang almost blacked out and fell to the ground. Big cousin usually goes back to the study room to sit for a while. When he goes back, you come back to me. Yes, miss. Lan Xiang's heart relaxed. She thought that she had been sentenced to death, but in the end, she was pleasantly surprised. It was fine if she was just secretly investigating, but if she had to go to the eldest young master to nag, the eldest young master would probably vent his anger and punish her. Not long after Lan Xiang left the study room, Shi Fengju returned to Ning Garden. He saw Sang Wan sitting in front of the moon window, embroidering something. Her drooping pink neck was slender, and her skin was snow-white and delicate. Under the faint light, looking from his direction, her small and exquisite face had soft lines, and her tender and full red lips were slightly raised. She was incomparably pitiful and cute. Her entire person was shrouded in the faint light, exuding a tranquil and elegant temperament. Shi Fengju's chaotic heart immediately calmed down, and the depression in his chest was swept away. The faint warmth and peace, and the peaceful feeling of time slowly spread out in his heart like the spring water after the snow melted. This feeling made him feel warm and greedy. Was this the feeling a family should have? Perhaps because she had lowered her head for a long time, Sang Wan gently raised her head, and reached back to rub the back of her neck. Her eyes were like gems, and when she caught a glimpse of Shi Fengju standing there, she couldn't help but be startled. She hurriedly stood up with a smile and went forward. "Eldest young master is back." And Shi Fengju walked over and smiled. "What are you embroidering?" The 3 words, "you're back," made him very happy. "I'm embroidering a headband for Mother," Sang Wan said with a smile. "My craftsmanship isn't very good, and I haven't finished it in a few days." Shi Fengju unconsciously picked it up and stroked it. It had a deep purple background, and both sides were symmetrically embroidered with chrysanthemum petals. There was a faint trace in the middle, which should be for embedding a gem or jade. The bright satin material was very comfortable to touch, and the inner lining was cotton. It was very soft and didn't hurt the skin. "You're very thoughtful, Mother will like it." Shi Fengju smiled and put it down, but he couldn't help but feel a little sour in his heart. It seemed that she had never thought of embroidering anything for him. "That's good." Sang Wan smiled and said, "That's right, the things that eldest young master brought back have been sorted out and sorted out. There are many things that I don't know who to give them to, so why don't eldest young master take a look at them yourself?" As Sang Wan spoke, she took out a few pieces of paper and handed them to Shi Fengju with a smile. She didn't care about the others, but Gu Fengzi would definitely have something to say no matter how she distributed them. She might as well clean up the mess. Shi Fengju was slightly unhappy and helpless. Since he had already handed over the things to her, it meant that he would let her do whatever she wanted with them. No matter how she distributed them, he wouldn't have any objections. In the end, she was still estranged from him. But it didn't matter, there was still a long way to go. Shi Fengju pulled himself together and took the paper. He saw that the hairpin-style small regular script was neatly written, and the names and quantities of the things that he brought back were clearly written down. He only needed to glance at it to remember the corresponding items. She was still too cautious. Thinking of how difficult it was for her, Shi Fengju felt even more pity for her. Shi Fengju smiled and said, "I've already prepared a separate set for Mother and the second household. It's my fault that I didn't make it clear. Most of these are for you. You can just pick a few and give them to your younger sisters and Nanny." Sang Wan widened her eyes in surprise and looked at Shi Fengju in disbelief. Shi Fengju's deep eyes almost looked into her heart. "Of course they're for you. You're the Shi family's young mistress. It's hard to avoid social interactions on a daily basis, and the servants in the family also need to be rewarded. These things are new and exquisite, so you can keep them to reward or give to others." As he spoke, he took out a piece of paper and pointed at it with a smile. "These few pieces of lynx fur and red fox fur, as well as these cloud brocades, a box of gemstones, cosmetics, a set of 4 treasures of the study made in the capital, and a few pieces of jade porcelain are for you. As for the others, you can just give them whatever you like." He suddenly treated her so well that Sang Wan couldn't help but feel surprised. She couldn't recover her senses for a moment. After a while, she smiled and said, "Then I'll have someone put them away. I'll distribute them to the various places tomorrow." After thinking for a while, she smiled faintly and said, "It's fine if it's elsewhere, but I don't know what little sister Gu likes. Why don't you take a look for yourself?" Since it was a gift for her, she would gladly accept it. It was a pity that they were all items that could be checked. It would be great if they were silver. Sangwon couldn't help but feel regretful. As for matters related to Gu Fengzi, Sangwon had already made up her mind that she wouldn't get involved. Hearing her call Gu Fengzi little sister Gu, Shi Fengju felt uncomfortable and said vaguely, "Just let Mama Li pick a few pieces of jewelry and cloth." After thinking for a while, he said, "She's now a concubine after marrying into the family. It's different from before. She should respect you. If she oversteps your boundaries, you can discipline her and deal with it according to the rules." Sangwon couldn't help but secretly roll her eyes. Discipline her and deal with her? Before you and mother-in-law can talk, her mouth will already be full of nonsense. I'd have to be stupid to provoke her. In any case, I'll just ignore her. Even if she destroys the house in this fu, it's none of my business. Since you said so today, if she goes overboard, you won't just stand by and do nothing, right? I know. Sangwon smiled and nodded, but in her heart, she had already decided not to do anything. Shi Fengju only thought that she understood that he was protecting her and couldn't help but smile. After the two finished eating, they sat for a while. Shi Fengju got up and returned to the study as expected. "I still have some things to take care of. I'll be back later. The lighting at night isn't good, so you don't have to do any needlework. Also, don't read too many pages of books. Talk to Mama and Xing Ji. If you're tired, you can go to bed first. There's no need to wait for me." Sangwon felt a warmth in her heart. She got up and sent him off. She smiled and said, "Then I'll go to bed first if I'm tired. Do you want me to ask the kitchen to prepare supper for you? I'll leave it to you to prepare some." Shi Fengju smiled and walked out. "My wife is still the best. She's so gentle." Shi Fengju couldn't help but feel annoyed. He wanted to knock his own head. He was really blind in the past. The pearl was right next to him, but he couldn't see it. Instead, he held that fish eyeball like a treasure. Unfortunately, even if he wanted to treasure her now, she wouldn't appreciate it. "Oh, Miss Lan Xiang, you're here again." Shi Fengju heard Chong Huan's voice from outside the study. He frowned again. "Is there an end to this? Brother Chong Huan, eldest young master is inside, right? I'm here to pass on a message from our young miss. Brother Chong Huan, please pass on a message to eldest young master," Lan Xiang said with a smile. "Oh, then wait a moment." Chong Huan glanced at Lan Xiang. He had the same idea as his master. Miss Gu was even more clingy than before. It had only been a day, but she had already sent her maidservants over several times. She was still in her mourning period. "Master, Miss Gu's maidservant, Lan Xiang, is here to pass on a message from Miss Gu. Should I ask her to come in?" Chong Huan said smoothly. "Just say that I'm not free. Tell her to tell you what she wants to say. If there's nothing else, she can go back first." Shi Fengju didn't even raise his head as he flipped through the book in his hand. Chong Huan was stunned and stood there. Eldest young master wasn't like this in the past. What happened to eldest young master? Did he not hear what he said? Chong Huan felt that it was necessary to remind his master. He coughed and raised his voice. "Eldest young master, Miss Gu, are you done?" Shi Fengju raised his head and coldly glared at him. He said in a low voice, "Why aren't you leaving yet?" Yes. Chong Huan shrunk back in fright. Lan Xiang was in a dilemma, but there was nothing she could do. She could only go back and say to Gu Fengzi with a smile, "Eldest young master seems to be very busy. He's not free right now. Young miss, how about we talk tomorrow?" "Very busy." "Yes." Just when Lan Xiang thought that Gu Fengzi would give up, she ordered her to bring the cloak over. "I'll go take a look." Chapter 77. Miss. Lan Xiang was shocked and hurriedly advised, "Eldest young master is busy, and he doesn't seem to be in a good mood. This servant thinks it's better if Miss doesn't go." "Since when do you have the right to make decisions for me?" Gu Fengzi snorted. She took the turquoise long cloak and tied it around herself. She ordered Lan Xiang to light the lanterns. Let's go. Lan Xiang had a bitter taste in her mouth, but she could only do as she was told. When they arrived at the study, Gu Fengzi signaled Chong Huan with her eyes to stop her from speaking. She didn't need him to announce her arrival. She ordered them to wait outside, and she gently pushed open the door and walked in alone. Her movements were very light, and Shi Fengju, who had his head lowered, didn't notice. She saw the man in brocade robes sitting behind the large red sandalwood desk, flipping through books and writing. His elegant posture, cold face, high nose bridge, and thin lips all showed that he had a good family background and an all-powerful aura. Gu Fengzi's lips curved slightly, and her heart was filled with sweetness. This man was now her husband. He belonged to her for the rest of his life. He was the one she loved and loved. No one could take him away from her. Gu Fengzi held her breath and avoided the light. She quietly walked to Shi Fengju's back from the shadows. She raised a slender hand and gently placed it on Shi Fengju's shoulder, smiling sweetly without a sound. Shi Fengju's body stiffened slightly, and then he was ecstatic. He was so excited that his heart almost jumped out of his chest. He naturally thought that Sang Wan had come to deliver supper to him. "Why are you here? Haven't you slept yet?" Shi Fengju's lips curved into a happy smile, and his voice was as gentle as water. "I missed you, so I came." Gu Fengzi's heart was filled with incomparable joy, and she said shyly and sweetly. She knew that eldest cousin wouldn't ignore her. She was the woman he loved the most. This familiar yet strange voice was like a bucket of cold water being poured over Shi Fengju's head. Just a moment ago, he was happy and excited, but now, he was furious. He stood up abruptly and took 2 steps back. He looked at Gu Fengzi and said calmly, "Why are you here? If it's not me, who else could it be?" Gu Fengzi was also stunned. Then, she felt a burst of jealousy in her heart. "Cousin, who do you think it is? Sang Wan? Are you allowed to call her by her name? Do you want me to remind you of your identity?" Shi Fengju's eyes darkened. Gu Fengzi was shocked and felt her mouth go dry. She licked her lips and said, "There are no outsiders here. Didn't I call her that before? Why not? In the past." Shi Fengju thought of the grievances that Sang Wan had suffered in the past. How much of this grievance was intentionally or unintentionally condoned by him? That was his first wife. His heart ached and he said coldly, "She is my legal wife. You are now a concubine." Since ancient times, there has been a difference between a wife and a concubine. Fengzi, I hope you remember this. Why? Gu Fengzi's eyes turned red. You weren't like this before. But you told me yourself that as long as you could stay in the Shi family, you would be willing to be a concubine. Isn't that right? Shi Fengju realized that he could no longer say the words "as long as you could stay by my side." Gu Fengzi was speechless and stared blankly at Shi Fengju. I know. Gu Fengzi took a step forward and held his arm tightly. "I know that you are doing this for my own good. You are afraid that I will say something careless in front of others and she will take advantage of it, right? Big cousin, I know. I will be careful." She actually thought that way. Shi Fengju was not in the mood to argue with her and nodded. "Remember your own status. Know what you should do and what you shouldn't do." "I understand." Gu Fengzi gently snuggled up to him. "Big cousin, only you would put in so much effort for me. Today in Ning Garden, it was my fault. I shouldn't have done that and caused Big Cousin to lose face. I won't do it again in the future. I really won't." Seeing that Shi Fengju did not speak, Gu Fengzi probed, "But, I really didn't do it on purpose. If it wasn't for Big Sister going overboard, I wouldn't have spoken without thinking." "Oh. How did she go overboard?" Shi Fengju asked coldly without batting an eyelid. Gu Fengzi pitifully said, "She knew that Mama Li was prejudiced against me and wanted to provoke Mama Li to make things difficult for me." As she spoke, she embellished, inverted right and wrong, and described how Mama Li was disrespectful and mocking her. Gu Fengzi did not know that when Shi Fengju arrived, he only heard her last words and did not know what had happened before. Because of her words, Shi Fengju's attention was drawn. Afterwards, he found an opportunity to question Xing Ji and Lu Ye. When he learned of the situation that day, he became even angrier and wanted to immediately send Gu Fengzi out of the Shi family. That's fine. In any case, Mama Li is your wet nurse, and she's also old. I didn't argue with her in the past, so I naturally won't argue with her now. Gu Fengzi continued, but when I asked her where my clothes, jewelry, and other decorations in Peony Park went, she refused to give me any excuses. She even mocked me and said that I shouldn't be thinking about things that didn't belong to me. Those things, regardless of whether they were valuable or not, were all given to me by aunt and big cousin. What right did she have to take it away without even asking? I was afraid that aunt would be angry, so I didn't dare to tell her. Big cousin, you have to take responsibility for me. Otherwise, who knows how she'll bully me in the future. Did she really say that to you? Shi Fengju asked indifferently, his hands clenching at his sides. If big cousin doesn't believe me, you can ask Lan Xiang. She was also there. Or, big cousin can go to Peony Park and see for yourself. Gu Fengzi said, feeling wronged. Since that's the case, then you can go talk to my mother tomorrow. Shi Fengju sneered silently. I don't care about the internal affairs of the inner residence. Let's see how my mother will take responsibility for you. To this day, Shi Fengju didn't believe a single word that Gu Fengzi said. He didn't believe that Sang Wan was that kind of person. Did she want to cause trouble? Fine, then she'll go ahead and cause trouble. Then I'll go ask aunt to take responsibility for me tomorrow. Gu Fengzi was secretly delighted. Those things were worth thousands of taels of gold, and they were all treasures that she had obtained with great difficulty. Now that they were emptied out, her heart was already aching to death. All right, you can go back. Shi Fengju withdrew his hand. He wasn't in the mood to look at the account book anymore. He said indifferently, I'm also going back to Ning Garden to rest. Gu Fengzi's happy mood immediately fell to the bottom. Her charming face sank as she stared at Shi Fengju in displeasure. Shi Fengju was calm and didn't back down in the slightest. Gu Fengzi couldn't help but admit defeat. That's right, Ning Garden was where he lived. It was only natural for him to return to Ning Garden to rest. But, how could he leave without considering her feelings? Gu Fengzi felt uncomfortable in her heart. Very quickly, she gave herself an explanation. It seemed like Big Cousin was really angry about what happened during the day. He was reminding her to remember her status. Although it was a bit cruel, he had put in a lot of effort. Gu Fengzi forced herself to accept this explanation. Big Cousin, please send me back. Send me back, okay? Gu Fengzi's voice was soft and tender as she leaned towards Shi Fengju. Lan Xiang. Shi Fengju directly called out. He turned to her and said, Fengzi, I'll remind you again. If you really want to live a peaceful life in the Shi family, remember your status. Remember. Big Cousin, don't worry. I'll remember. I won't make you worry anymore. Gu Fengzi forced a smile. Something seemed wrong, but she didn't want to think about it right now. The next day, Gu Fengzi really did complain to Wang. She added fuel to the fire and complained, Big Cousin said that you still have the final say in the inner residence. He told me to tell you and ask you to make the decision. Aunt, you can't just ignore me. So there's such a thing. Wang frowned and immediately ordered, Go and invite young mistress and Mama Li over. Gu Fengzi sat in front of Wang. Her eyes were slightly lowered and the corners of her mouth unconsciously hooked up. When Sang Wan and Mama Li arrived and saw Gu Fengzi, they knew that something bad must have happened. The two looked at each other and went to greet Wang. After hearing Wang's question, Mama Li slapped her forehead and smiled apologetically. So it's about this. This matter was Old Slave's negligence. However, Old Slave dares to ask Miss Biao, where did Miss Biao hear that young mistress took away all the things in Peony Park? Isn't that true? Gu Fengzi said softly. Now, all the matters in the household are managed by elder sister. Peony Park was also arranged by elder sister. If it wasn't for elder sister, who else would have the guts to do this? Young mistress is busy all day, but this matter was started and ended by old slave. It's better for old slave to tell Miss Biao and Miss Biao. Mama Lee said, Peony Park's maidservants and grannies have checked every item and used them as boxes. They were all recorded and sealed in the large storeroom. They didn't enter Ning Garden and didn't pass through young mistress's hands. They will naturally be returned to Miss Biao in the future. Old slave thought that Miss Biao had already asked the maidservants and grannies in Peony Park. Why didn't they tell Miss Biao? Where did Miss Biao hear those words from? Or is it just Miss Biao's own guess? Gu Fengzi didn't expect things to be like this and was stunned for a moment. She also didn't believe it. With such a good opportunity, she didn't believe that Sang Wan wouldn't be able to resist taking advantage of it. Even if a few items were left behind or broken when they were tidying up, no one would say anything. Moreover, she hadn't been happy for a single moment in the 2 days since she came back. How could she have thought of asking the maidservants in Peony Park first? Mama Lee knew what she was thinking when she saw her expression. She secretly sneered and said confidently, Peony Park's items aren't missing a single stitch or piece of thread. They're all in good condition in the storeroom for Miss Biao. If Miss Biao doesn't believe me, you can have the steward take you there personally. These words were clearly mocking her for being petty. Gu Fengzi's cheeks immediately became hot. She suppressed her anger and said with a smile, So it's like that? Then it's my fault. I didn't ask clearly and almost wronged Mama. It's just that since Mama already recorded everything, why didn't she send the booklet to me? Chapter 78. Mama Lee smiled and said, Could it be that Miss Biao doesn't remember the rules of the manor? That booklet still needs to be handed over to the outer courtyard for verification. How could it be returned so quickly? Miss Biao, don't worry. Once the booklet comes back, the old slave will immediately send it over to Miss Biao. Gu Fengzi was speechless for a while. Her face alternated between red and white. She couldn't help but feel angry. She thought to herself, I've been home for quite a while now. How could I know that you guys are so inefficient? At this time, the booklet still hasn't been returned. Does Miss Biao have any other questions? Mama Lee saw that she had nothing to say, so she continued to ask. No. Gu Fengzi could only force a smile and say, So it was a misunderstanding. It's all my fault. These days, my mind has been absent-minded. I don't do things methodically, and my memory is also not organized. Mama, please don't take it to heart. Aunt, it's all Feng Er's fault. I made Aunt worry again. When Wang heard what had happened, she was also a bit dissatisfied. However, after Gu Fengzi blamed herself and apologized, her heart immediately softened. She softly smiled and said, Since it's a misunderstanding, it's good that we've cleared it up. I know that you've been in a bad mood these days, so it's inevitable that you'll think things through. How could I blame you? No one will blame you. Mama Lee and Sang Wan hurriedly agreed. Sang Wan smiled and said, Mother is right. Why is it that now that we're a family, little sister is more polite? It's all little sister's fault. With elder sister's words, little sister is relieved. Gu Fengzi's heart was filled with hatred, but her face had a very sweet smile. Wang was so happy to see that the two of them got along well. She told Gu Fengzi, If you need anything in the future, just tell Wan Nyang. Wan Nyang is very careful. She will never make mistakes. Sang Wan smiled and said a few modest words. She then told her that Shi Fengju had asked her to distribute the gifts that he had brought back. She smiled at Gu Fengzi and said, Younger sister, you don't have any use for rouge, face powder, satin, or embroidery right now. I just picked out a few bolts of good material and a few pieces of jewelry and ornaments, and put them directly into the storeroom. In a few days, I'll give it to your sister along with the booklet from last time. How about that? What do you think? Of course it's not good. Gu Fengzi said angrily in her heart. I haven't even seen the shadow of that thing. Who knows if you will get some worthless junk as a disguise. It was just that at this time, she couldn't say that she wanted to see it personally. Even if it wasn't good, she had to say it was good. Sangwon sat for a while more before she smiled and got up to leave. Gu Fengzi was also urged by Wang to return to Peony Park to observe the mourning period. Gu Fengzi was very angry, but she had no words to refute and could only leave. Does she still have any sense of shame? How dare she ask Missy about such a small matter? Does she really think that everyone is as short-sighted as her and covets her things? Mama Lee said to Sangwon angrily as she walked back. She then snorted, saying that it's her things is flattering her. What do you mean it's not surnamed Shi? How dare she ask about it? Sangwon found it funny. Now that she was also part of the Shi family, then the Shi family's things should be hers. As long as the Shi family has no objections. Forget it, Nanny. Keep an eye on Peony Park in the future. Don't let mother-in-law see everything. Mother-in-law can't stand trivial matters. Sangwon smiled. Yes, young mistress. The old slave understands. Mama Lee couldn't help but sigh. To be honest, young mistress is still the one who is sincerely thinking for Missy and young master. But there's one thing that's not good about you. You only do things without saying anything, making others unable to accept your kindness even if they want to. It's fine if they can't accept it, but if others were to take advantage of it, that would be a grievance. Her words made Sangwon, Luya, and the rest of the servants laugh. How could it be like what Nanny said? Doesn't Nanny know everything? It's enough that Nanny can see it. Sangwon smiled. As the master and servants were chatting, a young lady dressed in a lotus-colored dress and with her hair combed into 2 rings came over with a servant. She bowed slightly and greeted Sangwon with a smile. Sister-in-law. Third younger sister. Sangwon smiled and returned the greeting. What a coincidence. Third younger sister is going for a stroll in the garden. I wonder if the osmanthus at the water pavilion has bloomed yet. I was just about to go and take a look. Shi Lian smiled and took the initiative to invite, why don't sister-in-law come with us? Mama Lee saw that the weather was not bad, so she joined in with a smile. Young mistress, why don't you go with third Missy? This osmanthus is a rare species. I'm afraid that there are only a few of them in the whole of Qingzhou. The one at the water pavilion in our household is even rarer. In the past, Missy loved to break vases, but I don't know if it has bloomed yet. If it has, I'll break a few branches and send them to Missy. Since Mama Lee said so, Sangwon could not refuse. She smiled and agreed, ordering Mama Lee to return to Ning Garden first. She brought along Lu Ya and the 2 servants, chatting and laughing with Shi Lian as they walked over. That's right, thank you sister-in-law for the gifts you sent over today. Sister-in-law is so thoughtful, I like them very much. Shi Lian said with a smile as she waved the embroidered fan embroidered with hibiscus and kingfisher in her hand. They were all brought back by your eldest brother. I'm just doing him a favor in passing. If you want to thank someone, go back and thank your eldest brother. Sangwon said with a smile. Shi Lian blinked her eyes and smiled slyly. Isn't that the same thing? Sangwon was stunned for a moment and smiled without saying anything. Shi Lian sighed. I think eldest brother is really good to sister-in-law. In the past, eldest brother didn't return home so early. Now that he has sister-in-law, it's really different. Sangwon was speechless in her heart. If only it was as good as you think it is. I think the business is not as busy as before. Sangwon said with a smile. Shi Lian shook her head and smiled disapprovingly. She glanced around to make sure there was no one around and then said softly to Sangwon, Sister-in-law, you don't have to lower yourself to Cousin Gu's level. Just wait and see. Sooner or later, eldest brother will see her true colors and know which is the pearl and which is the fish eye. Although Cousin Gu has married into our family and this matter is indeed our family's fault, she still has 3 years of filial piety. Sister-in-law, 3 years. What she meant was, you have to grasp the opportunity well. Sang-won rarely heard a real member of the Shi family speak up for her. She could not help but feel warmth in her heart. She stopped in her tracks and looked at Shi Lien curiously. She pursed her lips slightly and smiled. Before Sang-won could say anything, Shi Lien took the initiative and said with a smile, "Sister-in-law, you must be very surprised that I would say that. After all, in the eyes of others, I have always been quiet and quiet. I'm like a gourd without a mouth, unwilling to speak easily. I've never said such judgmental words before." After being pointed out by Shi Lien, Sang-won was even more surprised. She did not expect Shi Lien to be so amazing. Not only did she talk too much, but she also talked too much that she should not have. I won't hide it from third younger sister. In my heart, Ri Jong is also very puzzled. Sang-won saw that she had already said so she also smiled honestly. Shi Lien looked at her and smiled. Perhaps, this is the fate between me and sister-in-law. Anyway, sister-in-law is a person who can be close to and can be talked to. I believe in sister-in-law and am willing to talk to sister-in-law. Sister-in-law, you won't dislike me, right? How can that be? I couldn't ask for more. Sang-won couldn't help but smile. Shi Lien appeared to be a person of few words, but she was actually a very thoughtful person. Not to mention anything else, she was definitely a person who was worthy of being trusted and associated with. At least she was not like Gu Fengzi, who acted one way on the surface and another behind people's backs. It was hard for people to guard against her. That's good. Since sister-in-law said so, I will often visit Ning Garden in the future. Sister-in-law, you can't dislike me. Shi Lien's eyes lit up as she smiled. Then I'll be waiting, Sang-won said. The two of them looked at each other and smiled. Oh, elder sister, third younger sister, what are you talking about so happily? Why don't you share it with your younger sister? A sweet and proud voice sounded. Needless to say, it was Gu Fengzi. Enemies were bound to meet on a narrow road. Or it could be said that she was like a ghost that refused to leave. Why aren't you talking? Am I really that annoying? Or is elder sister still blaming me for what happened just now? Gu Fengzi saw that the two of them were not talking and smiled. Younger sister, you're thinking too much again. Sang-won smiled and said, It's just a misunderstanding. It's fine now that it's cleared up. If I get angry because of this, my days will be difficult. That's right, older cousin. Shi Lien also smiled and said, Although I don't know what happened, since it's a misunderstanding, sister-in-law won't take it to heart. Is that so? Then I'm relieved. It seems that I'm thinking too much. Gu Fengzi raised her eyebrows and looked at the two of them. Then she smiled and said, Speaking of which, younger sister really has to admit defeat. I can't compare to elder sister's attentiveness. Even third younger sister, who usually doesn't talk much, is so close to elder sister. Elder sister, you have to teach me in the future. Don't hide your incompetence. Sang-won heard this and felt extremely disgusted. She smiled faintly and said, Younger sister's words are too mysterious. I'm just treating people with sincerity. How can someone as smart as younger sister not understand this principle? So that's how it is. Younger sister has really learned. Gu Fengzi said with a mocking smile. In her heart, she scolded, Hypocrite. Sang-won ignored her and turned to Shi Lien with a smile and said, After walking for a while, I feel a little tired and thirsty. I have to go back. Does third younger sister want to sit at my place? Shi Lien smiled and was about to say yes when Gu Fengzi suddenly said with a smile, Third younger sister, it just so happens that I have a few words to say to younger sister. Younger sister, please wait. Unexpectedly, Shi Lien smiled and said, I'm really sorry. Younger sister, why don't you go back first? If you have anything to say, I'll go to your place tomorrow when I'm free. I'm really thirsty now, so I'll go with sister-in-law first. As she said this, she went forward and took Sang-won's arm and said with a smile, Sister-in-law, let's go. Okay. Younger sister, we'll go first. Sang-won smiled and left with Shirlien. Don't you like to complain? Why don't you complain again? Sang-won secretly said. Gu Fengzi was so angry that her lips trembled. She stared at their departing backs in a daze. After a while, she finally let out a sigh of relief. Despicable people getting their way. Lon Xiong gently spat and went forward. Young miss, don't lower yourself to their level. Come, let's go back. Gu Fengzi surprisingly did not lose her temper. Instead, she calmly raised her hand to stop her. She turned around and asked, Lon Xiong, tell me the truth. Have I been a little too impatient these past few days? Young miss. Lon Xiong was stunned for a moment. The serious Gu Fengzi made her feel at a loss. Tell me. Gu Fengzi saw her hesitant expression and knew that it was most likely the truth. Her heart was depressed for a moment, but she cheered up and said with a smile, To be honest, I don't blame you. You're tuning in to the Narrate and Escape YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.